How's it going? Yeah, I have a big thing. All my friends refer to it as Glenn time, where I like to show up 5 minutes early for things as opposed to being late. So anyone who's here now, congrats for being on time. And just to humor my fun ways of life, we're gonna give away a fun little, it's a gamer set and a 2U in Rama Grid profile. They're just cute and fun. And here's how it works. First person to type first in chat is gonna get it. What do you got?
Chat what? Text what?
In chat on Twitch. First person to say first.
So the first person who says, yeah, okay.
All right, looks like Dragstar's got it.
All right.
Congrats. Shoot me a DM with your shipping info. We'll get it out there. And props to everyone for showing up.
These people are too slow. Funny thing is that I forgot to unmute myself from OBS, so they didn't hear a thing that I said till weird stuff.
Oh, nice.
Pretty scuffed, I have to be scuffed. Otherwise, it's not me, right? Hi, everyone.
Well,
hi.
I think it works out, so.
Yes. How's everyone doing today?
Doing pretty great.
Yeah.
Always Friday, so.
Always Friday. Oof.
Good start.
Any plans for the weekend?
No, which I'm actually pretty excited about. I'm just gonna hang out and make stuff and go climbing probably, and just live life without a whole lot of stress.
That's pretty cool. That's something I want to talk with you. Like, how do you start climbing? Because I know you're a very active person. I mean, you can see that I'm not that active.
Give yourself some credit. It's all good.
How do you start it? Like, with the whole thing?
Yeah, I would say my movement background started officially as a late teenager, and I started doing parkour. And I was just, like Jackie Chan movies as a kid, just absolutely amazing, and just wanting to be able to jump on stuff and move around the world in a cool way, and discovered parkour, which at the time was very new. And I was like, oh, this is just a cool way to explore the world. So that became a very important part of my life, and also led to just more enjoyment in exploring movement in general. It doesn't really matter what the application is. It's just recognizing that you and your mind and your body can interface into the world in different ways. So that's been around for a long time. And then about a decade ago now, I was teaching parkour at a CrossFit gym. And because I was working there, we got discount memberships at the climbing gym. And I'd never really cared about climbing. I was like, for like $35 a month, like might as well try climbing. Like it's a thing, people do it. Right. And went, and it was actually really fun and really hard in a way that, like, I was very good at certain kinds of movement, and that did not help me climb any better than anyone else.
Oh boy.
Despite being able to do backflips and jump on things, I could barely climb a V0 like anyone else there. So it was really fun as just a challenge and a very different way to explore the world. And then that has grown for me to recognize that one of the most valuable things about climbing is you can go to a climbing gym any time of day, any weather, and get exactly the same experience every time, which is amazing compared to like surfing. You need to have good swell, and it needs to be daytime, and you have to drive to the beach and all these things. So just the consistency of being able to go get an experience that's very stimulating both mentally and physically is pretty huge value. So climbing is now a very large part of my life, and my most common physical activity.
That's pretty cool. I mean, I live in New York. I haven't seen many places about climbing in general, but
yeah,
maybe...
they're there for sure. There's quite a few fun gyms.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh. Have you come here?
I have, yeah. I mean, I grew up in Boston actually, so not that far away was where I spent 2/3 of my life. And then New York, I haven't gotten to go to as much as I would like, but I've been a couple times, and it's one of my favorite things to do when I travel, to actively go find climbing gyms. I kind of like collect climbing in as many as I can. So I've climbed in, I think, 4 in New York. There's like at least 2 over in Brooklyn, and then there's 1 in Manhattan. I think there's 1 other one, but it's super fun. They're all so different.
Oh boy. Oh boy, I think. Well, I was just putting an excuse up, but I guess you got me there.
Well, maybe you just found yourself some weekend plans. You can go find a gym
Yeah,
and try climbing the first time.
cool. I think I will need to get fit first to actually, get climbing. Hi everyone. Hi everyone. Welcome, 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 welcome. Sorry about the people who got here first and I was muted as usual. um, I hope everyone's doing fine and yeah. That that's pretty. I don't know. I kind of like the idea because like climbing, it's been such a huge part of your journey that you have climbing artisans, right?
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah.
And that was actually the thing that started for me was looking at artisans in general. I was like, okay, these are really cool, and like you can recognize or enjoy being into the keyboard hobby, and you can kind of go a level deeper into the keyboard hobby by having artisans on your keyboard. And when I was on the fringe trying to decide of like, hey, do I actually want to try to make these things or not? It was specifically the idea to tie in those hobbies that made me like push me over the edge. Because I didn't want to just make another artisan that was just a different face in the world of everyone else making faces. Like I wanted to do something that no one had done before. And I really wanted to try to combine things together. So that was what started the journey of Crux Caps, which the challenge of creating that forced me to figure out so much stuff that I then wanted to share that stuff with other parts of the hobby. And like it singularly was the design vision that led me to be what I am now. So it's pretty cool how influential a single idea can be at the end of the day.
Yeah, I love that. Honestly, it's pretty crazy. I do like how, and it's very different from anything that everyone does. Honestly. Yeah. So okay. So let's start with the intro, right? Like, so who are you, Glenn? So before the artisans, before that, so we talk about a bit already about your climbing experience, but what do you do like for life? Would you like to share about that?
Yeah, so professionally, I am an electrical engineer by schooling. I went to Northeastern University for electrical engineering, and that was my normal part of the journey. Originally, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I had a pretty unconventional childhood, and I was like, well, I can kind of do whatever I want, so what do I want to do? And tried a couple paths as a teenager that nothing really played out. So I was like, oh, engineering seems cool. I kind of like thinking about how things work and seems viable. Like you can kind of take an engineering degree and go in pretty much whatever direction you want. So like that just seems like an okay idea, and continue to pursue that, and workforce as well. So I enjoy engineering. It is not necessarily my passion for life. I don't expect to be an engineer for the rest of my life. It's just a thing that helps me develop skills that I really value and approach the world in a way that I really value. And most of my personal passion has grown to generally be some version of art and design and engineering, and just trying to create experiences, I would call them. That could be a physical object, it could be an event, it could be a food, it doesn't really matter. It's just recognizing that as human beings, we get to consume experiences that shape who we are and lead us to new things. And the amount that we can influence that journey for ourselves and other people, I think is really beautiful. So I spend most of my time trying to cultivate abilities to do that in as many ways as possible, whether that's learning how to weld something and CNC something and print something and cast something, versus learning how to connect with people in different ways, or exploring our own philosophy. Like all of that is related to the human experience for me. And that's my deepest passion, I think, is just trying to explore that as much as possible.
Wow, that was way deeper than I expected. But I mean, it's pretty good. It's a very nice way of seeing life, and trying to find your footing, right? And that's pretty cool. Thanks for sharing that, Glenn. So we talk about what you study, and do you have, I don't know, like a person that you said that had inspired you, like to think this way or like to be the way you are?
It feels like a cliche answer, but it's 100% my mom. Just again, very unconventional childhood. We grew up exploring the world for what it is and being curious because it makes you feel alive, and just the beauty that exists in living life as opposed to needing to check certain boxes or, achieve certain external types of success. And the depth that she lives that in her life and was able to guide me in life to find that for my own sake is pretty profound. So forever will always be the greatest inspiration that I know. And maybe cliche, but means a lot to me anyways.
I mean, it doesn't have to be cliche, it's okay. I think many people can relate to, feeling inspired by their parents, right? That's totally fine. Don't think too much of it. So how did you get into the hobby? Like mechanical, keyboards and stuff, right? How did you get started in that?
So I think that one I have one of the most conventional paths of most things that we'll talk about. And that grew up being a hardcore PC gamer, all the Diablo 2, many hours. City of Heroes, probably people don't remember that one very much, but that was a huge game for me. Just like old school MMOs, played WoW twice, like the normal teenage kid PC gamer world. And as you go on that path, you inherently seek more satisfying input devices. One is you get more money and can actually go buy more expensive things versus your standard
right.
keyboard. And then as you start enjoying it, you're like, oh, like my keyboard died, I want a better one. So you go look like what's slightly better, and you just creep your way up the path of
right.
You go from Dell to like a Razer wasn't really around then as much, but you go to some slightly better, still crappy keyboard, and then eventually that becomes a keyboard that has Cherry MX switches, and like a TTE Sports was my first, I think, technically mechanical keyboard. And then once you're playing in that enough, you eventually find your way to Reddit, RMK, and then you're like, oh wait, there's a whole world here, and then you get a slightly nicer one. Like I got a DAS 4, and I was like, oh cool, this one has blue switches instead of red switches. Yeah, so kind of creeped my way up there. Forgot to mention it in my background story, but my day job, I do work at PlayStation, so I'm an R&D engineer, so I'm in the gaming world, work in consumer electronics, so there's an extra level of just like I care about what's kind of cutting edge in the gaming space, and then because I was a PC gamer, that kind of spills over into like Kotaku is my most read blog, just check that every day and stuff like that. So ended up from the gaming side, like just want better keyboards, find mechanical keyboards, find RMK, mind blown, and then you start trying to figure out where you go from there. So
wow, that's I don't know what. Come on, Glenn. I don't know what to expect. I didn't know you work for PlayStation. That's awesome. I think every gamer once had the thought of, what if I become like, I don't know, like a game developer or something related with gaming, right? Like even I, like I'm a programmer, right? And when I was like a teenager, I was like, maybe I want to make games, right? And I did it, but I had the idea once, right? I wanted, but it wasn't the way to. But that's pretty cool.
Right. Yeah, it's a nice way to work a day job and still kind of feel connected to things, as well as like my knowledge is actually being a gamer and just caring about that part of the world helps me do my job better in a world where like not everyone I work with is a gamer, and some people are just engineers, and that's fine. But it's nice to be able to bring a little more sense of who our audience actually is. Like I can design things kind of for myself in certain ways. It helps me make better products, I think. So it's a nice mix of things.
What's a game that you play that you're currently playing?
Right now, well, in general, I try not to play games because I just don't have enough time. I love games so much. As an extension of the human experience, I think games are amazing and so beautiful, and I care about them deeply, and I try not to play them as much as possible. So the game I just uninstalled recently because I was playing too much is Noida. It's a little not hyped now. It's a roguelike that has really cool pixel physics. Like every liquid in the game has a different density.
I know which game it was. Yes.
Yeah,
it's like a wizard, right? You're a wizard, kind of, right?
Yeah. So just super stunning game. I finally beat it. So that was cool, but I had to uninstall it because I played too much. But that was what I played the most recently.
Wow. I mean, if you like something, I don't know why would I stop playing, right? Unless I have like a problem with it, right? Like unless you become like toxic towards it. But
I get really addicted to especially games. Like the bad thing is you're in a space, you have something you need to do. And you're like, wow, I need to go do this thing. but you don't have the energy to go do it. So then you flock to a low effort thing like a game. It's like, oh, I'll just play a game. And then, an hour goes by and then it's bedtime. And you're like, you didn't do the thing because you went and played a game instead. Like, to me, that's when I recognize it as a problem. If I'm like, I'm going to take tonight and I'm going to go play games and that's okay, then it's great. And you have a really good time. But when you avoid the rest of life because you are taking the lower effort path, that's when I have to go uninstall.
Wow. That's... Wow, you actually have a lot of, force, right? To what's the word? You have discipline, right? To actually do it. I'm terrible at it. I'm like, I play with my friends like till midnight, and then I barely wake up to go to work.
Totally, I've done
Bad
that
habits.
I mean, it's so fun, especially when you're playing with friends. Just the social connection that games can provide is so beautiful.
Yeah. Wow. That's... You seem like a very positive person, man. I don't know. So, all right. So we're talking about the hobby. Is there any keyword group that you entered recently, or you're waiting for?
I'm waiting for someone to actually put out ortholinear boards that don't suck.
Oh boy. Oh, okay. Then
100%. Or if it's not ortho, it's trash. Like,
what?
Fight me.
Really? Wow.
True. Especially 40%. The plank form factor is, to me, the most aesthetically pleasing ever. And now, like, staggered 40% are so hype right now, and I just think they're disgusting. Like, I hate...
Really?
I will never own one on my desk ever, whereas 40% ortho is stunning. So right now, my daily... Let's not lose this cord real quick. The daily driver for a long time now is the XD75. Aesthetically, it's my number 2 favorite board. It's just so... interesting.
GTB is not wrong. Okay.
we got some fans out there. Oh yeah, also fun fact, if you ever enter any of my raffles and drop a little hint that you use an ortholinear board, I'm much more likely to include free stuff in your order. So
really? Okay. I gotta know that.
If you lie about it, I'll know.
Oh,
you can always tell a true ortho fan. But yeah, so I really like ortho. Of course, there are very few ortho boards out there, so there's not that many things I'm allowed to get excited about, but that's the fastest way to get there.
I think I don't know, it's very weird to find ortho fans. I don't know. I don't think there's a lot of hype about them in general. I don't think... I haven't tried it out. I haven't tried it out, but I don't like the aesthetics of it. It just looks... Okay. I don't know.
Yeah, and for me, the aesthetics, that's specifically why I like it. Like, especially why I originally started doing it. It's like, I don't know if I can adjust to that. I'm like pretty hardcore, QWERTY, staggered, full-size guy. And I really don't know if I can handle not having a numpad. And then one day I was like, this thing's too beautiful. I have to try it. And then, hey, it worked out. WinKeys.
Have you tried? Yeah, have you tried making your own ortho?
I have successfully. I have finished PCBs because I'm an electrical engineer, so I actually do like.
Yeah, you can make PCBs.
I design schematics and I do layout. Like, I have literally designed entire ortho PCBs, and I just haven't followed fully through on the project. I did way back. Well, I also have a fully designed I just need to go approach a manufacturer for a really cool plank case, like a really high-end aluminum case that. Super cool, and I'm just too afraid at this point to actually go deal with manufacturers. So someday maybe it'll happen.
But I know you can do it, man. Like I know some there's some crazy people like you out there, right? Like they buy like the thermal, right, from Rama, and then you make a PCB that fits there, so that they have the ortho keyboard in a nice case, right? It's like so weird. I'm judging them.
I want the low profile chalk switches on a plank, like the thinnest stack up plank that you can make, because it gets really thin. So I want that, and so this is just annoying things about how people do stuff, but chalk keycaps stock are rectangular. They're not square.
Yes, they're not.
Because they came from laptops. And laptops don't do the standard 0.75 inch key to key distance. So any chalk keyboard out there, because all the stock keycaps are not square, they design all the layouts to not be square. So a plank light layout, which is the low profile plank that they made, isn't the same key to key distance as the regular plank, which is insanity. Like, why would you do that? I don't know why they did that, but I hate it. And part of that is because you can't get stock square keycaps. But since I make all my own keycaps, And like,
I mean, that's
yeah,
cheating,
makes me
right?
so
In a
mad.
point.
So I want to make the correct spacing chalk keyboard, and then I'll make my own custom keycaps to do it. But that's like one of my end game goals that I really want to work on. I just have to do it all from scratch because there's no case, no PCB because the layout's wrong,
No
and no
switches.
keycaps. I have to go cast them all.
Yeah.
But someday it'll work.
Oh man. Oh man. Oh boy. I mean, you just need someone next to you to be like, yeah, let's do this together, and then you do the IC trade and whatever.
Accountability is the thing, right?
Yeah. Someone needs to be there, like, to make you do it. All right. So how did you get into Artisans? You know, how did you get there?
That's another one that I think I followed pretty much the same path almost everyone else did, especially, we're talking 4 years ago, so the hobby was a little different there. But you look at Artisans and you're like, you know what, I think I could do that a little bit better in some way, right? Not that all Artisans are bad. There's some amazing things. Like, Hunger Key was probably the single key that got me into Artisans. Just seeing something that's like, that is true art. Like, I could not do that. The vision and the execution are just incredible. Yes. And I will forever respect, like, the first time I saw a JPEG of the Hunger Key by Binge was just like, whoa, like, this is insane.
He got some crazy stuff.
Yeah, and again, it's easier to look at that now and consume that in the way that we consume all the technology that has made the current hobby what it is, and to go back 4, 5, 6 years to when he was doing that and the tools that he was using to do it. It's just so much more impressive. So that will always be the single piece of inspiration that was like, art exists here and I really want to do it. And then there's a bunch of other keys where like, this is really uninspiring and just doesn't move me to do things. So I kind of want to try to do this a little bit better. So that was kind of just existing in that space for something. You're looking at RMK every day and you see some things like, oh, that's cool, and like that's really not cool, and like, where would I fit into this, and what is am I just trying to prove to other people that I could do it better? Because that's not worth putting effort into. So like, why would I do this? And then, as I mentioned earlier, like finally finding the very clear vision of what I wanted the Crux Cap to be, and a way to truly express my passion for climbing while also expressing my passion for engineering and keyboards and art and all these different pieces that kind of came together in one point. That was the thing where I was like, all right, like, I'm going to do this. And I'm not going to quit until I sell 100 caps. That was my commitment to myself. Because you're buying a pressure pot, there's like a lot of overhead to do it. And the fear is that you'll like just retail therapy, you'll buy all the stuff because you think you're going to do it. And then as soon as it's hard,
oh God,
no, I don't want to. And you just kind of cop out. So I tried to really commit to myself. Like, I'm not going to give up. Like, until I can sell 100 things that I'm proud of, I will not quit. And
have you reached that? I'm pretty sure you have reached that.
I did reach that, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you're still here, so that's good.
Yeah,
we wouldn't be here. That's very cool. Yeah. Winky's asking if when people quit asking for commissions so he can finish his design. Do you take commissions usually? Do you usually take commissions?
Oh, I do commissions for mold systems.
Yes.
So a rather staggering percentage of your favorite artisans probably are casting on my technology and or with internals that I designed for them.
We can talk about later.
Yeah, we'll get to that. But
yes.
I generally don't take commissions for keycaps. Okay. I just run raffle sales for those mostly, but there have been some exceptions.
All right. Okay. So how do you sculpt your, like, either, I mean, for example, the Bandit, was it 3D model or it was handmade?
A little bit of everything is the general goal. Mm-hmm. I would say I'm bad at all of it. I'm definitely a bad sculptor, and the goal is to somehow try and dupe yourself into creating your design vision at the end of it somehow when you can't actually do any one of the pieces well enough to realize your vision.
Boy.
So the Bandit was an interesting, he was kind of my first and only sculpt in a lot of ways, where I had the very clear part of the vision was the 3D glasses. Like that, I just have some weird obsession. I don't even know where it comes from in my nostalgia, but something about your classic white 3D glasses with the red and the blue lens just lights my soul on fire and makes me super happy. So I knew that was what I wanted. And as an engineering person, I needed that part to be perfect. Like, if the ratio on the glasses is even slightly off, it's just wrong. So that part I designed in CAD and 3D printed because it just part of the design vision was it has to be, there's no way to sculpt that to fulfill my vision. But then everything else I wanted to be very organic. So I sculpted the rest of the bandit by hand around the glasses. But then I can't sculpt well enough to get a finished quality piece with clay. So then I started doing design iterations where you sculpt a form, you make a mold, you cast a resin master, but then because it's now resin, it's all the same density. So then I use wood carving tools and I go and I carve away resin to get, it's subtractive manufacturing, and that gives me better surface finish. And then you can sculpt on top of that and then go cast it again. And you just do these cycles of sculpt, cast, carve, sculpt, cast, carve until you eventually end up with the final form that you want. And then you can do all the surface finish that you want on that. So the very original piece I would call mixed medium, where there's like a little bit of 3D printing, there's a lot of sculpting, potentially you're bringing in some other elements like, oh, there's a spring in it or whatever else you need. And then you can use the wonders of casting to convert that into resin, which lets you work with it in a totally different way. So that's the long story on that one.
That's a lot of process. That's a lot of casting and redoing and going back.
Yeah.
So now we were talking about like 3D and stuff, right? So why not talk? Do you think that one or the other, like 3D sculpting then like traditional sculpting, it's better than the other one?
I think they're different. And a lot of it, specifics of like what makes an artisan keycap are kind of impossible. Like you can't say what is art, right? There's the ultimate answer to that question comes down to somebody's personal intent. In a lot of cases, they won't even know that themselves because we rationalize so much of how we approach the world. But to me, it fundamentally comes down to what is your design vision and how are you realizing that? For me personally, anytime I notice myself taking a path because it is easier, I feel like that leads me away from art and what it means to be art. And I would generally try and push myself to use whatever medium is necessary to fully realize the vision that I started with. And if you're like, oh, like I think it would look better if I did it this way, but it would be too much work. To me, that's a sign that you're doing it wrong. And it's your responsibility to your own art and design vision to push yourself to do it the right way. And sometimes that means certain visions just can't be realized in that particular time. And same with like artisan keycaps. If I had to embed large diamonds in every keycap in order to realize what my vision is, and therefore charge thousands of dollars per keycap, that probably just shouldn't exist right now. And compromising that vision to make them small diamonds, if it takes away from what the vision actually was, that would be a path I would not choose because it would just feel disingenuous to what I started with. So like in the case of the bandit, having the glasses be perfect was a huge part of my vision. So I chose to 3D print them to make them exactly the way that I wanted. Would I have rather sculpted them by hand? Yeah, I think that would be cool. I think we generally feel like it's a little more authentic if something's sculpted by hand. But I tried to balance that out by sculpting the rest of it by hand because that could be real. I could fully realize the vision doing it that way. In many cases, better than if I 3D printed it. So, yeah, whatever tools get you to where you want to go, I think is the right way to do it. But there's exceptions to all of it.
How many tries do you think it took you to get the right glasses that you want for the bandit? How many prints do you like? Oh, let's go back.
For prints, it took 3.
Okay.
But that was the easiest part because you can just the ratios again. Like if it's human faces or something, there's a term called the uncanny valley, where if something looks very close to a human face but it's slightly different, it's way more offensive to us than if it's very different from a human face. Like Pixar or whatever, they have like big eyes. They don't actually look like human faces, and we see them as very cute and friendly. But when we see like bad animations where they're trying to look exactly like a human, but the ratios are just slightly wrong, it's like, whoa, like that's very not okay. So to me, 3D glasses are similar. If the ratio, if it's just slightly too tall for how wide they are, it's just very clear that it's not correct. So I knew the constraining dimensions of the keycap, and then it was just a matter of tuning the ratios
rest.
of the glasses, and I could just see that on a computer screen. So it took many hours of work to get it just right, but I didn't have to actually do many physical iterations because I could just see it on the screen.
That's pretty cool to hear. So, do you think, now changing the topic, right? Do you think that Rama caps are, will we consider artisans? Like, what's your personal opinion, right? Because, everyone has theirs.
Yeah. The easy answer is I think they are artisans, with artisan being a pretty broad spectrum. I don't necessarily view them as being as collectible as, an artisan that's in a batch of 6. To me, that feels like much more of the collectible art that we would talk about, or the way we generally approach a lot of the hobby. Whereas having, a machined cap that's maybe a batch of 100 or whatever else, I view differently. But most of it's just a different type of art. And I do think in Rama's case, what they make, I think, is very genuine to their design vision. And I don't know them personally, but I imagine when they sit down and like, we're gonna make this thing, what they end up making is very representative of what they started with in their head. And to me, that's something that I respect a lot. And I think that's a big part of, is it an artisan? Whereas if you sit down and like, I want to make the most beautiful cap ever, and then you make a cap that has a giant fingerprint on the front, to me, everyone, including you, kind of knows that you didn't fulfill your vision, and that feels less like art to me, personally. Do I own any Rama keycaps? No, I do not. Do I plan to buy any? Probably not in the foreseeable future. But that's just because it's a different thing that I'm not personally as motivated by.
That's fair. That makes sense to me. All right. What's your favorite color? I know some makers get like favorite color, like that art. That's a very charged question.
Based off what you know about me so far, can you guess? Chat, feel free to play along here.
I wanna say green. I don't know why.
Okay, just you got a feeling?
Yeah, I feel like green, maybe green.
Nice.
Or yeah.
We got some guesses rolling through chat. Remember, my last name is Black. There's a bit of a bias.
Oh, true. There. Well, that's true. I didn't consider that, but I guess it could be literally black.
It could be. So, okay, we'll start with probably my single least favorite color.
Okay.
And it happens to be green.
Really? You hate green? So, wow.
Especially in clothing, I own I have a belt. I have a green belt. And that is the entirety of green that I own in my whole wardrobe.
Wow.
Which is a fun fact.
Oh, God. I got it so wrong. I get literally the opposite.
You never know,
boy.
right?
Oh, boy. Oh, well.
A couple of chats did get it right, especially Draxter's on a roll. He was first for this one. But my favorite color is indeed yellow. Specifically, like a caution yellow. You can see we got some furniture in the back over here. And especially like caution stripes are my dream aesthetic. So white, black, and yellow is the most common thing that I flock to. But in general, almost every color except green has a place in my emotional approach to the world.
Oh, that's very sweet. Oh, I don't know why I didn't think of yellow at all. I don't know. I'm bad at colors. Okay.
It's all good.
I mean, I love red. Red. And you have red. You're wearing red.
I have definitely cast the most red artisans. Is that true? Somewhat like red, blue, purple. But especially, my keyboard was all red too. Just the strength of red is very satisfying to me in objects a lot of the time, especially the keyboard stuff. It just like it's not aggressive, but it has a presence that I really value.
All right. Yeah, I think you got. Yeah, I think I saw one of your keyboard that's had red mods. I don't remember. Yeah. Yes.
Absolutely.
All right. All right. So, how did GTB Labs begin?
When I started Crux Caps, which was kind of the first cap
Yes.
That Crux Cap start to finish took about a year and a half of like every day worked on them. Like no joke. It took that long. I had to figure everything out under the sun to do Crux Caps. So in that whole process, I started like Stereo Bandit was birthed somewhere along there and all these other things, but I didn't really want to run sales because I was like the Crux Cap is what I'm trying to do. So it was difficult that along the way where like I knew early that I didn't want Crux Caps to be my brand. It's a product. Like I wanted the standalone product that spoke for itself and was self-contained, but I didn't want to just be the climbing keycap guy because I had so much more vision than just, that was just one thing I wanted to do in an arena of a million things I wanted to do. So then, you know, I'm working on other stuff, and I had never used Instagram before. In fact, I actively didn't like it, or I hated on it, I should say. And then somewhere along the line, I was like, oh, like a lot of people use Instagram for keycaps. Like I'm now I'm looking for other people's stuff here, so I need an account. So what's that going to be? It's like, oh, I'm just going to use my normal screen name. I'll be Glenn the Black. That's fine. Wasn't even sure if I was going to be like making keycaps or how I was going to do that yet. And then Crux Caps was enough of a thing, and I already had this Instagram, and I knew I wanted to make other stuff. So I was like, how do I brand this anywhere? And I was the glyph on other stuff, so I had so many different personalities in different places that it was like still is kind of hard to find me. A lot of people don't really know like that I am GTB, and it's kind of hilarious on Mech Market to try to find some of my own. Someone's like, oh, the glyph thing, or like, oh, it's Crux Caps, or oh, it's GTB, and like slowly I'm trying.
I think the badge changes as well, right? For your Crux Caps, the badge changes as well, right? I think the Maker's Mark, it's different, right? I think.
So because I make my own internals, I like every keycap having its own internals. Like Crux Cap says Crux Cap, Stereo Bandit says Bandit. I now have some blanks that have my GTB logo, but I actively don't want to have one internal that I use on everything, because to me, I would rather go put the extra effort to make each keycap feel complete on its own. So extra confusing of like, who is this guy?
Who is this guy? Oh no.
In a bin, there's no reason to know that it's PTB other than like knowing me from somewhere else. But yeah, just trying to figure out along the line, like, what is my brand? Like, who am I as a person? Who am I even trying to be in the community? Because I am making my own art, and I'm also, you know, doing mold systems for other people. Like I'm doing tutorials, like what is my overall footprint here? And the best bet for that was me, like as my person, more than my company. And in the same way, like if you follow me on Instagram, I post videos of me riding mini bikes in skate parks. Like I try to, climbing for sure. Like I posted a wallet that I made recently, and I just kind of made a choice. Like I didn't want to just do keycaps on my Instagram. I wanted it to be kind of my brand as a person, as a designer. In the same way, I don't know if I'm going to make keycaps forever, but people may want to follow my journey of exploring the world and doing that in all the different ways that I do that. So I cultivated that, you know, as Glenn the Black, and abbreviate that to GTB, and
put labs.
Try to. What was that? Yeah, with the labs.
You put labs somewhere there.
It's a pretty high value website name to have, or a company name to just do a 3-letter acronym. So the labs just, you know, kind of representative that it's a bunch of different things. It's kind of forever R&D on everything. It's hard to make a product and decide it's officially done, because you can always do something to improve it. And I'm always kind of looking for the next thing to improve upon what I'm already doing. So life feels like a lab to me in a lot of ways, and just brings me a lot of joy to keep exploring that. So that's kind of where that came from.
Wow. So we talk about your Crux Caps, and how do you got into mold making your own system, like the whole developing it, testing. That's I cannot imagine the work that you had to put behind to be like, oh, so this can be successful, right? This works. Because there's not a lot of people who make system itself, right? So there is the synth, right? There is CBAT, and there's you. I think there's some makers that have their own system that somewhere came out, right? But it's not, you wouldn't be able to buy it, like, right? Like yours. So how did this start it?
I had an interesting path into keycaps. I think many artisans that are artisans make keycaps in a lot of cases, it's the first time they've ever really tried to make something physical. It's like, it's kind of their first step into art, and it's a really amazing way to do that because, especially now, it is technically pretty accessible. There's lots of guides. You don't actually need that much hardware, so you just kind of can go from like, I've never made anything, to like, I'm inspired by this format. I have pretty clear constraints that help me define what I'm trying to do, and I can go do it. And it's really amazing how many people I think have been ushered into the world of creating art with keycaps as an avenue to do that. That was very much not my path. I have spent almost all of my personal resources and passion trying to create everything I can think of for many, many years, and cultivating as many different skill sets as possible to do that. So when I came into keycaps, I already had, like, I could laser cut things, I already knew CAD, I could engineer things, I knew something about machining, I was already kind of into 3D printing, like so many different methods for fabrication were things I already felt comfortable with. And if anything, I'm frequently motivated by projects as reasons to go learn how to master new skills. Like, oh, I kind of want to figure out how to, I want to find some jewelry design so I can go learn how to work with gold. And like, that's,
right.
Instead of like, I just have to make the thing, it's like, oh, this is an excuse to learn the thing.
About the other thing.
And doing that. So on that same vein, resin casting was something that I'd always seen. You know, like people make, especially props, like cosplayers, they make these amazing prop replicas, and they're always resin casting them. So I'd be searching through, like, how do I make this cool thing? Oh, it's resin casting. And it just felt really overwhelming. And you're constantly like, oh, I can't do that because I don't know how. And I don't have a setup, and I don't know what resin to use. Just like, it was too much to really get into. So it had always been on my radar, like, I would love to master this technology to cast things, because it lets you create things you can't really create in any other metric. So when I finally found keycaps, I was like, oh, like this could be enough of a reason to force myself to figure this out. That was a big motivator. And just in that same process, and at the time, it was either you use the Synth 2.0, which is a very unpleasant experience, or you use clay and a cardboard box and some toothpicks. And it was just like
some
really hideously barbaric way to cast keycaps, and I didn't want to do that. Like, that's, I know I can do better than that. Like, there has to be other ways. Like, how do I have molds be swappable? Like, I don't want to have to write, you know, A and A prime on two different parts of a mold because they can't pair with each other because the master has changed position between the two. It's like, I don't want to do a craft. I want to engineer something, and I want to like produce products. I don't want to make one-offs. So that was a big motivator for me. And if I hadn't been able to do that, if it was like, oh, you really just have to use clay and toothpicks, I probably wouldn't have gotten into casting, because it wouldn't have felt like enough challenge to me. And it wasn't just about having keycaps as an output. It really was about how do I move my manufacturing skills forward, and how do I grow as an engineer with the time that I'm spending on this thing, and then also have an output. But it very much for me has been like an engineering challenge in how to approach manufacturing, while also recognizing that you're making art by hand. And like, how do you not lose that? Like, I don't want to just go injection mold keycaps.
Right.
Like, I want to make it as easy as possible to express yourself in art. And there's a very interesting play between those two worlds, where at some point there is a world of over-engineering a system such that it stops being as much art. And there's a point where it's hard to do your art because you don't have a reliable enough system to do it on. So I don't know if that actually makes any sense, but that's how my mind goes.
It does. Like, I think I'm the other part, right? Like, for example, you went for the whole understanding how everything works, but for me, like, you know, I mentioned a bit that, you know, I got into casting recently and sculpting and the whole thing, right? But like, for me, it's like the sculpting itself, like the actually working with the clay, or, you know, I don't know, 3D modeling, so I haven't tried, but like working with the clay and, you know, having to work on a certain area, to me, that's where the interesting part is for me, right? But like, I didn't thought too much of the system itself. Like, for example, I'm using like the CPAD, right? So I'm like, okay, so that's their thing, right? But I'm only focusing on the sculpt itself, but that's it, right? So I think that that's why I wanted to talk with you, because in a way you have done everything, like in the Artisan, right? You have done molds, you have done systems, you have done artisans itself, right? The sculpts, and I don't know,
Yeah.
it's pretty crazy. And I don't know if I mean, I haven't. I probably won't do it, right? But I don't know. It's crazy to see all your progress that you have made. Yeah.
I think that was a big part of it where, again, 4 years ago, there literally was no, like a synth was the only piece of hardware that existed that the average person that you could find anywhere that would help you make keycaps. And everything else was, you just have to do it in clay. Like literally you are putting clay in a box and sticking a keycap on and super gluing toothpicks onto the corners. And like that, it was awful. And as a result, most of the keycaps that people made and sold were kind of terrible, like on a mechanical perspective, right? Like stem fit, like you get an Artisan and it wouldn't fit on your keyboard. Your stems would crack all the time on these Artisans that, like it's just people doing their best at home with clay. And as an engineer, for me, the number one thing is like, this is a keycap. I don't care what it looks like. It's supposed to go on a keyboard and
it's supposed to be functional.
Yeah, and if it cannot perform that function, it's a failure in my personal metric, right? And it's not like, hey, you're a failure because you make other ones. This is just the way I approach the things that I want to make. So that was the very first thing before I did anything, was like, it has to work mechanically, which means you kind of have to engineer it to some extent, because like silicone has shrinkage. If you take a cap that fits perfectly on a keyboard and you make a mold using that cap, the caps that you cast from that mold will have shrunk by some amount, meaning your stem will most likely not fit anymore, even if your master fit perfectly. So you have to actually design for that shrinkage if you want to make a perfect quality product. So at the time, without any of these systems, everybody was basically forced to make poorly functioning keycaps unless they were an engineer themselves and went and put a ton of effort and work into doing this thing. And that was really sad to me, because that meant that as a community, we could never rise above a certain threshold of quality product. And I don't want artisans to be known as like, oh yeah, it's really pretty and someone worked really hard, but it won't stay in your keyboard. Just go get some saran wrap to like make it a little, like, I don't want to be known for that. I don't want our community to be known for that. Like, I want our community to grow and make better products for everybody, because like, why not? So when I first started, that became kind of my personal mission statement, was I want to help people make better stuff, in addition to me making better stuff. But if I make better stuff and no one else does, like, that's not good for the community. If anything, then people won't be able to appreciate that my stuff is better. So even if I make the best quality product, everyone else makes, in theory, a lower quality product, no consumer is going to be able to appreciate that I'm making something better. Not to mention, I'm just super greedy of like, why am I withholding this technology that's forcing everyone else to make worse things or be an engineer? And I really wanted to enable people to make art and not have to be engineers in addition. Like, I'm an engineer, that's fun for me. That's really not fun for other people. So that was I think of myself as having two keycap businesses. One is I make art. I cast keycaps, I sell them like everyone else. The other one is I provide consulting, and I disseminate my ideas into the community for makers themselves. And I view those as totally different things, because there's like, one is like
one's art and the other one's like the part, the mechanics of it, right? So now talking about that, right? So you say that it's something that you want to do for the community and things like that, right? So you were here before the CBOT existed, right? Even the version 1. Long before that, right? So like, if you want it in a way, right, to help the community, why not open source it in a way, right? Like, to be like, oh, here's the files, do your thing, I can help you this and that, and why not, open source it?
That's a complicated question, or a complicated answer for sure. I do indeed make a very active choice not to open source my designs. I make a very active effort to share my ideas and my design decisions in ways that I think have been innovations on my part. Like, I did things that other people hadn't thought of doing. They told me I was wrong and crazy and whatever, and I've kind of proven that they actually work really well. And I've worked super hard to cultivate those. And I'm really proud of some of the innovations I feel like I've brought to the technology that we all use to make caps. There's certainly some amount of pride in the effort that I've put into that, and the countless hours and hundreds of dollars that I put into that R&D on my own. And to some extent, I value people caring enough to put some effort into their own journey. And I don't want to just give it away as a shortcut. If you just want to make keycaps with as low effort as possible, that's totally fine. I don't necessarily want to go out of my way and compromise my own approach to design to do that for you. There's some threshold of you want to create art and you want to put effort into that and you're motivated to figure that out and challenge yourself. And I would love to help on that journey as much as I can. And there's also a big piece of just quality control as well, where all my designs are optimized as far as I can, even to the extent of for my exact printer, I have custom offsets for how much I know it will add 1/1000th of an inch in this way. And I try to account for that in my designs. So if I open source that design and you go print it on a completely different printer in completely different humidity level with a completely different resin, you are going to make a product that is inferior.
It's not yours. Yeah.
And that's not anyone's fault, but I can't support you if you're like, hey, Glenn, I got your design and I tried to print it and it totally didn't work and it's too tight and you could be trying really hard and I want to help you, but I can't go design it all just for you, for free as a thing. Mm-hmm. So some amount of, I just don't have the resources to support that. And I don't really want people to take it saying like, oh, this is fine. I'm just going to make caps with it because I'm going to trust this authority. And then you're making caps that are inferior quality. And that now disseminates into the community. And now the community has lower quality caps that technically came from me that I can't quality control at all. And I just don't really want to be involved in that whole cycle. So it makes it really complicated because I would just want everyone to be able to make better stuff using my designs, but I also don't want to be responsible for an inevitable level of quality loss that happens as a result of that. So the best compromise I have is, a lot of people hit me up like, hey, like I shipping from Shapeways for an L2K would be $50. Can I just print my own? It's like, I'm sorry, I can't share the file because I've already said I'm not going to share the file. And a bunch of people have asked. However, please use my ideas and go design your own. It's a pretty simple part. Like, I'm not going to come after you. It's like, you just printed your own L2K. You knocked off my idea. Like, I'm not trying to monetize it, but you need to work that out on your own for your own printer and kind of be responsible for your own quality. And the hard part was the idea of like, oh, cool, you can make a Lego brick with a stem. Like, once that's public knowledge, there's nothing that special about the L2K itself, and you can just go design one. So, I don't know. It's a really rambly, hard to answer thing, but hopefully some part of that came through.
Huh. All right. I mean, like, it's not something that I really thought of in that way. I just wanted, to understand why, because I don't think, can you buy that? I don't think you can buy it on your website, right? Your whole system?
Right now, no. I only do custom consultations. And that was another big thing of it was way back. I mean, I don't know as much the OG history, but certainly when I started, branded internals were not a thing. Like just literally maybe nobody. I mean, yeah, I'm sure someone did it. I wasn't the first one to do it, but they were not on the map. It was not a normal thing. So
the maker's mark, basically.
Yeah, on the inside, right? For sure. So the amount that I carry in my own products, again, like Crux Cap, I don't want it to have a GTB stamp. I want it to have a Crux Cap internal because that just feels correct to me. So I was doing that for myself and then looking at other makers who had amazing products. I was like, I really want to help your product be better. Why can't we can we have your brand in here too? I want to pick up the cap and know that it's yours and feel all that stuff. So trying to design internals that encourage the aesthetic of the maker's brand, just because that feels like a more complete product to me. Right. So starting to work with people on that was a big thing too. And most people didn't care. They were already selling keycaps, very successfully without branded internals. Like, why? People already like it. People think my stuff is great. Why would I put in this extra effort to brand my internal? Which is totally valid thinking, right? If it already works, why fix it? But that's unfortunately not my mentality at all. And I always want to try to make things better if I can. So I wanted to encourage makers caring about their products and having more branded internals. So I didn't really want to just put out a generic internal that everyone would just buy and it's like, oh, it works. Why bother having it else? Like I kind of wanted to
to have,
help the community
yeah.
have more branded things. So that's why I started only doing commissions. Like I won't, if you specifically think your brand would benefit from having a blank internal, that's awesome. And I will totally work on that. And I've done that with quite a few makers. But normally you have a logo or something that will brand it more. And I wanted to
Be part of that,
help the
right?
community
Help
grow.
them.
Yeah. So that's why I so far have not chosen to just release, like, go in my store, buy a custom, not a custom, like an off the shelf internal to just go cast your keycaps. Because then if you cast a keycap on it and someone else casts a keycap on the same one, they're identical. Like you both lose identity by not having that extra piece of your brand. And once you're selling things, like once you're a business and you're accepting money for what you're doing, I feel like you should have some responsibility in that brand identity. And that's just a sign of my personal beliefs that I choose to operate on in how I approach my business, I guess. But
I think you need to make something on your website and like huge. So please contact me if you if you want to do something with me. Because like for example, I didn't know, like I didn't know, for example, when I was looking for systems, right? Because I was looking at the scenes, I was looking at Seedbed, I was looking at yours, but I was like, it's not in the store, so I cannot buy it. And I'm the kind of person that I have mentioned many times is that I don't like to bother people in general. Like PMing someone else is like, ish, what if they're busy? I don't want to bother, or what if they leave me on scene, right? And that's my mentality, right? So I think you need to make something in your website huge. Please just email me or something if you want to do my system, right?
Yeah, sadly it's more complicated than that, which is because of my eccentric ethics. I do every internal that I do is designed completely from scratch. So the wall angle down to like the degree, the exact curve, like that's all custom to work the best with the graphic for your internal specifically. And I just wanted, in the same way that like Artisans, each sculpt is in theory unique from scratch, and we value that as a piece of art. To me, an internal is a piece of art. Like I feel like I'm making art when I go design someone's internal, even if that looks pretty rigid and people are like, oh, you just designed it in CAD or whatever. Like I try and approach that as a piece of art every time, and that takes a long time. Unfortunately, there's not like the easy one is I have an internal that I design, like mechanically it's fine, and you come, it's like, hey, I want an internal, here's my logo, and I just stick your logo on the ceiling and I go print it. And someone else comes and I erase your logo and I put their logo on instead and I print that. And you're just kind of farming that, right? That's not enough art for me. So to work with somebody as a client is a lot of time on my side. Even just talking to you and explaining to you all the things of how the system works and finding out how you cast to make sure that I'm not like forcing you to cast in a way that's not quite your style. Like all those pieces really matter to me to try and help you as the artist make better art, as opposed to saying like, hey, you should do it this way because I'm just right. And like, I don't really care how you do it because I do it better. And like, that's just not how I like to approach it. So I can't work with that many clients at once, because that's also time that I'm not putting into my own art. Like one of the,
of course.
Like I don't run many sales. And when I do run sales, I don't have many caps in the sale, because any time that I would put into keycaps, at least half of it is going towards helping other makers and like doing my consulting work. And that's time that is not going into my own keycaps projects and my own casting. So I already kind of split my attention in a way that makes it harder to do either one. And if I go yell everywhere like, hey, I do these things, like, oh, you want a system? I got you. You want a system? I got you. I just don't have the resources to do that. And I also don't want to charge enough money to make that viable for me, because I don't think you should have to be rich to cast good keycaps. So I try to keep my prices very low to help the community, and there's just a certain throughput that maxes that out pretty fast.
Okay, that sounds pretty good. So let's say, give me an example. So right now, I don't know about anything about making Artisan itself, but I heard of you, and I want a system made of you, right? Like, can I approach you if I've never made a cap, like never? I have no idea. I'm barely good at sculpting, and even then, can I approach you? Like, will you take someone like that, or you'd be like, you know what? I don't know about that.
I will always start the conversation. If anyone, if you want to reach out, I mean, even just for questions about casting, if you hit me up, I will always be excited to try and help you. If it feels like you're just looking for answers and you want a shortcut doing as little work as possible, I'll be less excited to talk with you over time. But there's no such thing as a dumb question. And as long as you're showing some amount of respect for someone else's time, any conversation is always enjoyable. Like in theory, we're still a community, right? Even as the community has grown to the point that a friend said this very well today, is like, we're not really a community anymore, we're just a hobby. And that was a cool distinction that I hadn't really thought about, but it's true, right? We've gone away from you inherently feel connected to somebody else because we're all in this together, and now there are people that are just trying to do their own,
right? Yeah,
you can be in your own. Nothing wrong with that, but face to face, to me, we're still human beings, and I still care that we're all here on this journey. And especially when you're putting in the effort to try and go make stuff, like, I want to help with that if I can, and I'll usually say if I can't. But always cool to reach out. I think there's points where for you as a maker, it is not correct for you to need my product yet. And if I'm like, cool, it's going to be, $300 to get you set up on this system. If you're not sure if you want to be casting yet, I don't think it's correct for you to go spend $300. Like that's just, and that's like, sure, like it's not that I don't want to take your money or whatever else. It's just like, I don't think I'm leading you down the path you should be going down for your own sake. And I don't. It's a big thing for me that I don't want to try and force your path to be my path. And
of course,
if something is worse for me but better for you, I would push you towards taking the path that's better for you, because that's the role that I'm trying to play. Like, I'm not doing it to get rich. I'm doing it to help you make better stuff. So especially if you've never cast before and you're not sure yet, it's very likely that you don't need my product yet. Down the road, if you've been casting a bit and you're like, wow, like I'm getting a lot of flashing using my Z-Butt, and my yield is kind of low because I'm getting bubbles here, and like these things, like I'm trying really hard and I'm not getting the level of cast that I need, then you probably could benefit a lot from my product, because I have solved most of those issues in the iterations that I've done. Or if you're like, wow, I really want a branded internal and I don't want to just slap my logo on a Z-Butt internal, like how do I go custom? Then that's a great reason to come talk to me. So I think there are thresholds there. And sometimes I'm too busy. I'm like, hey, sorry, I love your work. I can't work with you right now. And I may, personality-wise, it may just be a bad fit. And I don't think we should work together ever. And that's okay too. So that's a little bit of how I try to approach it, and not just be like, this is best for me and I just want to do it this way. Because it is technically a business, it is not one that I try to get rich off of.
Yes,
in chat, asking for internals that I've designed.
Yes.
We tried to screen share earlier and it didn't work that well, so I can't.
But I can send him the link because I can send him the link. Don't worry, I got you.
Also, if you named 5 of your favorite artisan makers, I've probably done at least one of them. The first one, and this is kind of one of my favorite stories, I think. Hopefully I don't embarrass him, but hopefully everyone knows Ritual Master. He is he makes the Watcher. It's just a really amazing. He does amazing resin work. He doesn't cast as actively anymore, but a couple years ago he was all the rage, and he came to me, which was super cool. Like you see someone on Instagram and you're like, oh wow, I love this work. They're clearly trying really hard, and I just love what they're doing. And I'm just like quietly like, this is great, because I have a thing where I won't ever approach a maker. I'll never go to you and be like, hey, I like your work. You should hire me. To me, that feels unethical. So I will only engage with people if they come to me. So you'll see something that's really cool and like, oh, I love what this guy's doing. And then if they come reach out to me, it feels really cool. I'm like, oh, like you actually care.
Hey, you know me.
Yeah, exactly. So that's a fun little thing for me. But he came to me and I was like, oh, I'm so excited. I love your work. Like, let's make something great for you. So usually in the consulting process, I start with just trying to hear like the elevator pitch of what somebody's brand is. Like, cool, like how do you view your brand? What's your aesthetic? Are you cutesy? Are you horror? Are you aggressive? What's your logo? Why are you doing what you do? Like, where are your goals in your casting? Just like, brand consulting. It's like, who are you as a brand? And then from there, I try to help pick out like, okay, like these seem like cool things that we could use aesthetically, or this would fit here. Or like, oh, let's go with this shape over this shape. And when I first talked to him, he was like, yeah, I just like, I'm having trouble with production, and I really just need the system so things go smoother. And I was like, cool, so what about your brand? He's like, I don't know, just like put an RM in the corner, like it's not a big deal. And this was way before everyone had branded internals. I was like, dude, like you're called Ritual Master. You make amazing stuff. Like I really want to feel more of this aesthetic. Like what if we had some like spell circle or like some kind of cool like arcane thing? Because I feel like that would just speak more to your brand. He's like, okay, yeah, I'll go play with it for a little bit. He comes back in a couple days and he drops the sketch that is now his internal in Discord, and it was just like so perfect. Like he's an amazing artist. He does all his own stuff. You have a watcher right there?
Yes, here's a watcher.
Oh,
it's in red, obviously.
Nice.
It's not gonna focus.
Yeah, I mean anyone who doesn't know Ritual Master,
it's not gonna show.
Go check
probably.
Instagram.
It's not gonna show.
But
sorry.
Yeah, he did an amazing job on the art, and it just felt so much more in line with the creative vision that I kind of wanted in the internal. So then I took that and went, and that was one of the first like chamfered, like instead of a rounded internal, everything is a hard face. So there's a lot of like sharp angles, and it just matches art really well. And that was a great example of being able to do, fully custom wall shapes as opposed to only having one wall shape that I just drop a logo into. So that was one of the ones that just really felt like art to me. And then he was able to go and cast on it really well. So a lot of his casts, he was one of the first ones that started double shotting his internals. So he does the whole Artisan outside, but then he would go multi-shot to make this arcane thing pop more. And it was just such a cool realization of what I wanted to be in the community. Like I helped somebody in ways that they couldn't do themselves, then go put even more effort into their own art to make something that's that much more beautiful. And that was, for a good year and a half, if you said custom internals, I think everyone thought of Ritual Master first. It was just like by far the clearest example of like a real fully integrated piece of art. So that's my personal favorite story so far of doing custom internals. But
very cool. I like, for example, when I entered the hobby in, like, my first Artisan that I ever bought was Jelly Key in December 2018. But I didn't get into the hobby itself, like even in mechanical keywords, till mid 2019. And I think I started buying Artisans like the fall. So by then there were already some makers that had, the Maker's Mark, right? So seeing the change, like from time, it's pretty cool. It's not something that I haven't experienced a lot of it in that sense, I guess. But for example, they're having a lot of new makers, right? Have you feel that the new wave of makers that are coming in, and what do you think of that?
I mean, I think it's great. Ultimately, like there was a thing, especially early, and I think early I made a lot of enemies with this, where it's like, who is this guy making casting so accessible to people? It's like by me, making technology available, whether it's L2Ks or some of my consulting work, a lot of people were very threatened by that, I think, because they had worked really hard to get where they were using whatever process they'd done, and now all of a sudden people can just skip all that, and you can just show up and start making caps so much faster than you ever could. So of course that means there's way more people making caps, and therefore more people selling caps, and that, any growing economy is going to have a lot of issues with that. Not to mention with all the ethics that we've brushed close to in this conversation alone.
Right.
And any two keycap people could talk for days about all the ethics and all the challenges and what is art and all that stuff, right? So there's a lot of very big issues that come from that. And especially when you have something that originally starts with an economy building around it all being handmade art. Every keycap is painstakingly fought for, and that's why it costs $45 or whatever else. And at the beginning, that was super valid when yields were terrible and you were lucky to get a couple keycaps at the end of it, and you really were off in the tall grass fighting for every piece of art that you made. And of course, once an economy is established, that price is going to stay relatively constant whether technology develops around it or not, right? Like, and then Jelly Key getting into the game, that was kind of it wasn't my first Artisan, but Jelly Key was just ramping when I was getting into the hobby as well. So there was like, oh, now China's in on it, or like, are they mass manufacturing these things but claiming to be whatever else? And does that make our art less valid, or do we have to charge more now because we're doing it by hand and they're doing it? They get that whole mess, and that will never stop. It's just part of it. But there is just a lot of challenges that come from that, and some amount of, is making something accessible bad? And to me, the answer is always no. Like, people should have fewer boundaries to explore the world. whatever that is, and whatever levels of inclusion. Like, you should never fortify yourself in a place of superiority by depriving other people of technology. Like, I don't believe in that for life, let alone for random hobbies that we do for fun.
Yeah.
So I think new maker influx is great. I wish we had a little bit more ethical guidance in the community around that. I wish people coming in saying, hey, I've never made anything before. I really want to make some art, and maybe I'd like to sell a couple. I wish those people could find more mentors that talked about ethics and talked about, like, hey, let's figure out how you should actually price your keycap. Or, hey, let's talk about what it means to be proud of a product, or strive for a higher quality. Because I think those things don't have to be super negative. You don't have to be a bad person because you could make your keycap slightly higher quality. And you don't have to be a bad person because you charge $65 instead of $55. But I really wish people could take a step back and look at some of the effects in the community for that, and take a step inward and be a little more honest with themselves around why they do things and how they do things. And as we get more and more influx, it's harder and harder for people to find the right amount of guidance in those areas, especially when most of them are taboo topics in the community to start with.
Yes. I don't know. It is a very heavy topic to talk about, like pricing itself. Like, it's what's the right amount of money that you should charge for a cap, right? Is this the right, like if you look back, like most of the time the caps weren't as expensive as they are today, right?
Yep.
You have seen the price hike that there's been in the hobby. Like how much was, like, I don't know, a maker's cap back in your day when you started?
The first Artisan I ever got was from Cause Keycaps. Shout out to that guy. I barely knew what I was doing. I saw a raffle that hadn't closed. It's like, oh my God, gotta get in there. I probably thought I was getting a clack keys that was gonna be worth $200. And I didn't get my invoice notification. So I got an email that my invoice was canceled. I was like, no, what did I do? And I emailed him like, oh, I'm so sorry. Like, I didn't know.
Missed it.
He was a gentleman. He's like, oh, that's cool. I still got you. So he let me still get my cap. So shout out to Kaz for being my literal first Artisan. It was $35 at the time. And, that was, I don't know what hype things were. It was more, then it was pure scarcity. Like, people weren't hiking prices. You just were lucky to get one, like, genuinely. And now, we have price scarcity and other things that drive it. But the price creep is insane, right? Just looking at, like, you are a new maker. You've never sold a cap. You're running your first sale. What do you price your keycap at? And that used to be closer to $30 when I started for like a sculpt. And now I think like 50 plus is normal. Like, I barely sell my, like, pricing is its own thing. I personally don't want a price hike outside of what it actually feels worth to me. And there's in life, this is a big thing for me in terms of ethics. There's two approaches. The easiest one is when you're negotiating salary for your job. And society says you should make as much as you can. And my personal ethics is you should make what you're worth. And if you could, play the game and, like, negotiate better to make an extra X thousand dollars a year, that feels kind of unethical to me. Because somewhere in your heart, I think you should know what you're worth, and you should fight for that. And if someone says, like, hey, we're not going to pay you that much, then you shouldn't work for them. It's like, cool, like, I'm worth more than that in myself.
Of course.
And that's not how artisan pricing works. It's very much charge as much as you can. And the biggest argument for price is, hey, if people think it's too much, they won't buy it. And unfortunately, that's not economy. Like, that, it's just false. There is, like, we as a society, we if something's more expensive, we assume it's better. That's just how consumerism works in so many cases. So if you're a hype maker, if you cultivate a brand that says, I make really good stuff, and then you charge a lot, people buy it and they're happy with it, and then they need to rationalize that it's actually good so they feel justified in their purchase. If you make really good stuff and you cultivate that aesthetic and you sell it really cheaply, people probably think you make a worse product because, oh, this one's so cheap and this one's so expensive, clearly this other one's better, and then they flock to that. very rarely are we like, whoa, I got such a great deal on this awesome keycap because he only priced for 45 instead of 70. And like, I'm going to go follow this guy even more. Like, it's just, we don't really approach it that way, right? Especially when it's hard to get things in the first place.
Like for me, I do approach it like that. Like for example, like when I see your caps and they're usually between 50 to 60. I mean, they're usually 55, right? I'm like, oh wow, like how is Glenn selling his caps for $55 with so many work into it, like so many shots and so many hours? Because like a cap, even making one cap is like, how long does it take you? Depending on the resin that you're using, like 5 to 10 hours maybe. Yeah,
it's hard to quantify. Not to mention the R&D that goes into it, right?
Exactly. It's not only the casting, it's the sculpting, it's the R&D behind. So there's a lot of like things, right? And then like I have seen like new makers out of nowhere, right? And they're like pricing their caps for $75. I'm like, and I can see like, you know, like bleed in stuff from the picture that I put. I'm like,
right. Like, oh, there's a fingerprint right on the side. Like, do you know what surface finish is? Like, is it that hard to do one extra surface finish on your cap? And that is what it is, right?
Right.
And that's why we see that now, because with no metric, there's no omniscient rule that says this is what a keycap's worth, right? And you can't even say like, okay, this is a double shot keycap versus a 9-shot keycap. Like, you can't say every shot adds $5 because it just doesn't work that way.
It's art, that's right? Work. Yes.
So what we see guiding most of it is, I am person A, I make keycaps and I set them at I start for $50, whatever, I make these keycaps. You, person B, entering the hobby, looks at my caps, you're like, okay, he makes these for 50. I think mine are better for whatever reason. So I should price mine for slightly more than this other guy because I clearly put more effort into mine versus this other guy. And whether you're correct or not doesn't matter. It's your perception is you think your art is superior, better, whatever word you want to use. So if you priced it for the same as mine, then that would be wrong because I have defined some metric based off how I price that lets you assume to price more. So you then price at $55. Like, I'm just a little bit better than this guy, but not that much better. So cool, now you sell them for 55 and I look at your work as like, oh, well, mine are clearly better than this guy. He just came out of nowhere for 55. So I should probably raise my prices because I've been doing this for a year and like, therefore I'm way better. So then I leapfrog you or whatever else, or just new makers pile on, right? And then someone else is like, whoa, shit, sorry, keycaps, I can go make a 2-shot keycap and sell it for $70. That's free money, let's go. And then you start going. And the problem is, the consumer isn't really that discerning because we don't have an arena. There's a taboo that you don't really go talk negatively about people's caps in the wild, right? Like, I don't get it. I get an Artisan. This has happened many times. I enter a raffle, get an Artisan, I get it, and I'm home, and I'm like, bummer. Like, I really hope this would be better. Like, I don't want to put this on my board. Like, oh wow, these colors really don't match. Like, oh, here's a fingerprint on this sculpt. Like, I'm not happy with this thing anymore. I'm not going to go post a review and go on Instagram. It's like, hey, everybody, don't buy this person's caps because they have a fingerprint on theirs. Like, that's just not how we do it, right? And in a lot of ways, that's really nice because it's nice to not be super negative with everybody's work. But we lose the ability to have feedback where, if someone, and hey, this is for everybody, we'll say it publicly, if you get one of my sculpts, you enter a raffle, you get one of my keys, you're disappointed by some part of it, please come talk to me because I want to make my stuff better. I want to learn about that. It's not like you're angry and you're mad at me. Like, if you're unhappy with something that I sold you, I would rather rectify that in whatever way we can. Or I'd be like, hey, I'm really sorry. Like, that's just how I had to go this time. Here's my reasons. But I try to be super intentional about how I do all that so I can stand behind my product with pride. And that's something that same thing with like new makers entering and ethics in the community. We're just not allowed to talk about a lot of those things, and we're not able to have a healthy discourse that comes around that. So I think the community as a whole suffers, and most of that gets reflected in prices because we ultimately just see this price hike of people feeling invalidated because a new maker shows up with a not very good sculpt and they're charging more than someone who's put a ton of effort into their art, and that makes them not want to keep selling their art for the low price compared to what it feels like everyone else is doing. And there's not a good way around that other than it's important for each maker to be ethical in their own pricing. And the whole make as much as you can just fundamentally erodes the ethics of art, I think, in my very eccentric personal ethics around it. Have I ever given someone else feedback about their artisans? I try. And a lot of that is, you kind of have to read the room. And I think there are many artisans, especially my clients, as I, inherently develop some amount of friendship with people that I work with, where I think there is room to really talk. And a lot of people, a lot of artisans, very genuinely want to make the best stuff that they can. And especially the people that frequently reach out to me are inherently jumping through some hoops to find me and talk to me. And that's a great litmus test for people that I'll probably get along with, because we're trying to make better stuff.
Yes.
And those people, yeah, I've had some really awesome conversations with those people about how to make everything better. I have not yet reached out to someone to be like, hey, just so you know, I thought this was bad. I was disappointed by this. And some of that is knowing someone well enough. Like, a lot of people don't want that. A lot of people really just want to make their thing. They have people who love their stuff, and that's enough for them. And I have no desire to go try and assert my own standards onto them. There's a whole, do you assert your beliefs by crusading against other people, or do you just stand for your beliefs and encourage people that want to do that as well? And I really try hard as a person in life to do the latter. I don't want to go try and convert people to my way of life. I just don't want to exert effort to help people follow a different way of life that I don't agree with. And to me, there's a big difference in the energy we cultivate by doing that. So I try to, if someone comes to me, is like, hey, would you like to critique this thing? Or like, hey, I saw you entered a raffle. Like, what did you think? I'll answer any question that wants an honest answer every time. But I won't go assume that people want to hear the answer to a question they didn't ask.
Of course. I think that there should be more feedback in general, right? Like, for example, I'm selling my caps for $40, right? And I think I'm happy with the price. I think it's fair. It's something that I'm a beginner, and I know, I'm putting my effort into it, and I think that's what's worth it, right? But I feel like I always try to ask for feedback, I always try to post my what I'm working on, right? Like, for example, I'm doing a small hair thingy, right? It's a more something hair related, right? So I'm like, what's the best way to do actual looking hair with clay, right? Things like that. I feel like, I don't know, it's hard to criticize when they didn't ask for, right? And I think people get hurt when it's unrequested, right? So it's hard to be like, oh, if they don't ask for help, then you don't know how to help them, right? In a way.
A lot of people also really, ego is the thing, right? So if I'm a maker and a lot of my identity is built on I make these keycaps, this is the thing that I do, then we're inherently wired to try and protect ourselves in that, right? So if I feel threatened by you show up out of nowhere, wow, you just sculpted something way better than me, and half the time, there's a good chance I'm going to be kind of threatened. And a lot of people don't handle that with grace. And if you come to me for advice, I'll give you kind of bad advice, I will try to take you down a notch maybe, or just not be very supportive of your work. Or there's a bunch of things that are very present in the community where people just don't give good advice and aren't encouraging in the right ways, or just have difficult ethics when it comes to it. So there's a reason I think a lot of those things are taboo, and a lot of us are kind of afraid to just start initiating some of these conversations, because there's no good reason to assume we're all on the same page in what we're looking for in that. And some people really do abuse their power in seniority and whatever else, or just they like to go talk negatively about things and make people feel bad, and trolls, we could call them, and there's no shortage of those in the community, and any community, and that stuff matters, right? It's hard to craft a safe space where people really are genuinely interested in somebody else's well-being, and that's okay, but it's sad, and the more that you can cultivate that safe space, the better, I think.
Yeah, I totally agree. But it's something that we haven't reached sadly yet. Hopefully in the future, right? Something that hopefully we can actually do, right? I do love seeing new makers, and some have really crazy ideas. I always forget. I always give this example that there's this guy. I never remember his name. He made the other day. It was like a hand pressing a keycap. He sculpted it, and I was like, and he doesn't I don't think he ever has sold anything in general. And it just the sculpt itself was so good. It was wow. It's very inspiring to see different takes on existing stuff, right? Yeah. And I think that's what I like about the hobby, right? I wish one day he will sell his stuff, right? But that day hasn't come, and I don't know. It's I don't know. It's hard, I guess, in many ways, right?
Definitely. And that, to me, that's the stuff that gets me the most. Like, anyone trying to do something, it's not that it hasn't been done before, because it's not like, oh, you did a space helmet first, so that was your great. Like, it has to do with the design vision, right? Did you have a vision for a thing that whatever avenue, whether that's spiritual or mental, or like a million different reasons, but it is offering something that has not been offered before. Like, you didn't just be like, oh, I want to iterate on that thing because like someone else did it, so I want to do something similar. It's like, I really do want to just go in this direction because I believe in it, and then you put forth the effort to realize it. And to me, that work really does kind of speak for itself. And when you're scrolling through Instagram and there's artisans, and then some things are like, that is really cool.
Yeah.
And that stuff just gets me so excited.
Yeah,
so
I agree.
Yeah.
More on this in terms of constructive negative feedback will really benefit the space. First, he says there's almost an art to giving and receiving criticism, and many people who have ever been in a position when that is a regular occurrence can have a hard time with both aspects. Yes.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. I mean, it's
so hopefully all of us as artisans can just lead by example, and I think both inviting, going to people saying like, hey, are you willing to give me honest opinions about my work, and hopefully receive that well, and then also, providing a safe, like if people come, like anytime someone comes to me, I do put active effort into my own mentality to not try to further my own vision, right? Like it is, as a client, it's like, okay, what do you need in your casting and how can I help you get there? Or say that I can't, right? Versus how do I convert you to progressing my own agenda? And I think that's just something we can all do in all human interaction, but especially in the community, that just bit by bit helps things move forward better.
So what will we do to create that safe space?
Yeah, I mean, I think it has to start in interpersonal relationships, right? Especially as a community now, we don't have any real, like RMK is now, I don't check RMK anymore. It's become its own thing. GCAC barely exists at this point. The main MetKeys Discord is its own thing. I'm not active on the ZBUT Discord, but I think they're big enough now that it's also its own thing. Like, there's no central depository of like, this is the hub of all mechanical keyboards anymore, right? We're
yes,
kind of disseminated beyond that. So I think it just kind of has to be cultivating that safety in yourself and how you approach other people, because you can take that with you. And then in your individual relationships and interacting with people, I think you can put effort into breaking some of those taboos and even just calling it out. Like, hey, like, I would love to interact with you in this way. How do you feel about that? And then one-to-one, you can start growing the net of those things. And maybe, we can build those things enough that it does become its own community. But I think the artisan circle itself is still small enough. There's just not a single place we all hang out. So I would just vote cultivating that in your individual relationships when possible.
I think that's the best way to do it, as for and easier, right? In a way, because if it's like interpersonal, there might be like misunderstandings, right? But there will probably less misunderstanding if it was like, some random person coming in telling you, oh, this and that, right? You're like, who are you? Tell me this and that, right? So I guess exactly. So I guess it makes sense in a way to make it more personal. But even reaching out, right? Like me, like I said, right? It's for me, it's very hard to be like, send you a message because I like, what if he's busy? I don't want to take his time. That's my mentality in general, like in life. I just don't like bothering people, and I get that's bad as well, right? In a way, but it's, I don't know, it's something that hard to see in a way, right? Like be okay with bothering in a certain way, right? Not like bothering you, like, for small stuff, right?
Sure.
I don't know.
I mean, respecting people's time is a thing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. We know there's a balance where you can be very disrespectful of expecting my time. Like, you could have Googled that, and there's other things where it's like, please ask me before you go spend 3 days trying to solve this problem. Like, I really wish you just asked me first. And there's a lot of grace that you can have on both sides, right? If someone comes to you, don't assume that they're a jerk and they're wasting your time. Like, give them the benefit of being a good human being in how you approach them. And then at the same time, when you go to ask someone a question, you can make sure you did a little bit of due diligence first. And there's always some sweet spot there, I think.
I agree. Oof. Oh boy, we talk about that a lot. I really
Yeah, we
have
covered a
fun
lot.
in that. So what do you think was like I don't know, like happy success or failure, like while making your molds that you learned from?
So many. I mean, a success for sure was the crux cap. Like
Hmm.
in my life, I have for a long time enjoyed exploring the question of what is my greatest creation,
Hmm.
because that it spans so many things, right? And usually, I've had like my biggest projects. I've made a lot of progress, and I've fought really hard and gotten to a point where you're so close. Like I see there's 2 steps left. I see what they are. I know how to get there, and it would be my greatest creation. And then a million things go wrong, and it ends up taking an extra year to finish, just like really awful journeys to finally someday finish the thing. And when you
Hmm.
finish it, it does fulfill the original vision, but you as a
But
person and your abilities progress so far in the meantime that it's
hmm.
no longer fully representative of what you're capable of. So it prevents it from being your greatest creation. And Crux Caps was no exception. It took me a year and a half, start to finish, working literally every day to finally finish that product. And by the time I did, it was not my greatest creation, but it is everything I wanted that product to be. A giant part is the packaging, actually, which a lot of people nowadays, even now, I think it's still pretty cool. But at the time,
It
no
was
one had
no
custom
one
packaging, let alone like I wanted it to look like a product you could buy in a store. Like if you walked into a designer toy store and that was on a shelf, you wouldn't even blink an eye. It would just belong there. And I'd never done anything like I'm not a graphic designer. It's one of my worst skills. I have no ability to freehand original art at all. And having to ultimately graphic design a box to a semi-professional quality was one of the hardest things I've ever done. And one like emotionally, the amount of effort in that was just insane, down to spending weeks designing the foam inserts because like literally everything about Crux Caps I did from scratch with many cases no knowledge of how to do that before. It's like, okay, like I want the unboxing experience of a Crux Cap to feel like a blind box toy. Like I want to have this moment when you're holding the box and you slide it open and you're like, whoa, like that's what's inside.
right.
And like I couldn't just dump all the stuff in the box. Like, okay, so
Call it a
how do I
day.
hold the wrench and how do I hold the bolts and like how do these things go? It's like, okay, I can fit them all in, but how does it pretty? And like how do I use the space? And here's the constraints and like all this stuff was like every part of that I had to figure out. And I just weeks and weeks and weeks of effort and tears and doing it wrong and doing it better and scope creep and all this stuff. But by the time I finished that and like doing my first Crux Cap sale and finally shipping caps that I like truly was proud of was just an incredible feeling to like actually have that be done and know how much I'd fought to get there with every part of it feeling kind of like opposition. So that will always be a high point, I think, until
Like
it makes it
like you
better.
were
But
saying, like packaging and the experience of it, it's something that I appreciate a lot. Because like for example, I even key craving, it's here, right? I always say the same example. To me, like key craving was well the best. Like in the time when I got
yeah,
it, it blew my mind. It
it's
was
next
like
level for sure.
yeah, I was like, dude, like this is amazing. This is amazing because it came out with like a box, like super padded inside with white
Nice.
foam, and then you open it up, you take it out, and then you see a nice box, like a 3D printed box, and
Yeah,
the
with the
artisan
little
inside.
windows on it
Yeah,
now,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
super cool.
It's so cool. It's so cool, and then the
Yeah,
card inside, it's all so nicely like thought out. It's amazing.
yeah,
That's to me like the packaging experience. It's like the second like it can be the best thing of the artisan itself. Honestly, it's something that I
definitely.
really appreciate. I'm a huge key carving simp as well.
Nice.
Yeah,
Well, I
it's
think that's a
like
really big thing, and that's part of the we'll call it ethics again behind
mhm,
what we do as an artisan. Like for many people, for good reason, to them an artisan keycap is an object.
right.
It is the thing that I put on my keyboard or put in my box, and that's as a designer,
Hmm.
it's more than that to me. Like as I said at the beginning, everything that I do is feels like crafting the human experience, like air
Right.
quotes and capital letters. And to me, the keycap experience is from opening the shipping box until the keycap is no longer in your possession. Like I care about all those pieces. I care about what it looks like when you pick up the box, and like how much spirit is imbued in that object. And Crux Cats, like I wanted this reveal where you're like, you don't know what's inside, and then you see what's inside, and that's always been a huge goal of mine. And it's okay that a lot of makers don't have that goal, like they just want to make a keycap, but that's always been something that I really want to be a part of everything that I do, is like, how are you crafting a complete experience as opposed to doing one thing really well and just not caring about the other thing at all, right?
Just keeping you in a box like with some bubble wrap. I'm like, hey, here it is.
I think the makers that do that there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, of course, there's nothing wrong.
Yeah,
different goals. That's all. But I think it's lately. I think it's becoming a bit of a standard. I think more makers are starting to do that, which is good. I like seeing that. Like 2 weeks ago, I had Captomaniac here, and I didn't notice when I opened up the package, but like he has like it makes it look like a little toy inside as well, and the way that he does the window itself, right? He told me it was the ice thingy that you, what's it called? Where you put the water? Yeah, the ice thingy,
Yeah.
So he literally cuts that. He cuts that by hand, and then he gets some things, and then he just put it in. Basically, it's all DIY, and like I'm like, and it's something that it feels good, and it's like something nice to see, right? But it's like, for example, I don't think I have the ability to do that, right? It's something that we talked at the beginning, right? When you told me, oh, you did such a nice the story, right? It's a small animation, even the the overlay, and I was like, oh, thank you, but I didn't do this, right? Like, to me, it's like because I don't have the skills, right? To me, like, I would prefer, instead of giving me the burden of doing that, I would like, you know what, I will actually leave someone who actually knows his stuff to actually do it. And I'm like, hey, help me with the design. Here's the money, your thing. Right, and it's a different view, I think, as well, right? Because, like, for example, you said, like, you did the art, right, for the Crux, and to me, I would have just paid someone else to do it.
Well, so to be clear, I hired multiple people. Well, one person. The art on the front was a contracted art piece. I had a very strong vision of what I wanted, and I interviewed artists and found someone, and they did that. The graphic design, I did more myself. There's 2 artists that did work on that. But it was more just pulling together the whole thing. Like
like a director, right? Like a bit like if you're the director behind.
The original art is not mine.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, you know what I'm saying, right? It's kind of you're being the person behind it, right? I don't know. It's part of it, right?
I think there's a big piece of that, though. In the same way, I think it's similar. We talked at the very beginning of, like, okay, sculpted artisan versus 3D printed artisan. Like, which one's better? And there's not a better. They're just different. And some feel more authentic than others, but it doesn't really matter as long as the intent behind it is genuine. And I think the packaging experience is really similar. Like, if anything, the goal is to celebrate your brand, right? And to create the experience that's in your heart of what you're trying to share with the world. And if you have the skills to do that, that's awesome. Like, I single-handedly laser cut all the foam for, like, all my packaging. I do make myself, other than purchasing printed boxes that I design myself. But I do all the foam. I laser etch all my tins. Like, that's stuff that I have the skills to do, and I really enjoy bringing that part of my personality to my product. Is that better than going to China and ordering a bunch of them? Absolutely not. It's great that people can get like branded items from China and do all that, and shipping that experience is still really beautiful, and I respect those people a ton for going through that effort. And it's just a matter, like, because you can't do it yourself doesn't make it any inferior at all. It's just that it's a different way to realize the vision. In the same way that I would love to have drawn my own Crux Cap cover art, and I can't. So rather than have no cover art, I went and hired an artist. I think that's way better.
But you put the work in it, right? Like, you were looking for a specific artist, and you had like this idea, and he's like like a conductor, I guess, in that way,
Yeah.
right? He's helping you. I think that's the same way with me, right? So I work with one guy, and then I'm like, I like this, I want this, and that, and I think that's
Yeah.
fair as well, right?
And
Uh,
in your case, like having Stream with such cool graphics, I think is amazing. And like whether you did them yourself or you hired somebody, still shows that you had a design vision and you put in a
mhm.
lot of effort to get there. And I have a ton of respect for that.
Oh, thank
So
you.
exactly how you get there doesn't matter as much as having the vision and fighting for it, I think.
Right. So now we can talk about like how Artisan Alliance came to be. Do you want to talk about that? About your iconic video?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty similar to the story for a lot of other things of,
Hmm.
getting into casting. I was really struggling at the time, just to, really fighting for crux caps and just struggling so much to make progress with really no one to talk to about it and no one that felt like they cared. Like I approached a couple higher profile makers and I just didn't feel very seen by them and what I was trying to do. And it's like, okay, cool. So I'm just gonna be a weirdo doing this thing, and I went to the Bay Area meetup. It was my first meetup at the time. I forget. It was probably 2016. I forget the year. Uh, is it 16 or 17? And it was hilarious because I'd never been to a meetup. I had no idea what to expect. And people have their boards everywhere, and I didn't really have a board. I didn't have a board I was proud of at that point. I think I was still on the DAS4, and my whole presence in this hobby was crux caps.
Correct.
So the week before, I laser cut this adorable little acrylic display that was
Hmm.
like a climbing wall, and I had bolted holes into it, and I had two little switch testers, and it was just this tiny little like product display
Oh,
just for crux caps. And I just sat there with like I plunked this down. Like it's not a keyboard. Like the artisans don't really have much presence at meetups anyways, and it was just hilarious like how weird I was just like sitting there quietly by my little artisan
yeah.
display when no one had any idea what was going on. And I was like trying to like some again higher profile makers. I had taken some of my early multisystem prototypes to them. I was like, hey, like I've been trying super hard. I tried all these things and like, well, is this what you do? Because at the time no one talked about how they cast stuff and just like
Right.
felt really shot down. It was a very lonely experience. Like I'm trying so hard to do this thing and I feel like my motivations are so great and just
Oh
no
man.
one felt inclusive to me. If anything, they felt threatened. It's just like it was really unpleasant. So I'm just
Oh
kind
man.
of
That's so
like
hard to
whenever
hear.
I'm here, like I'm gonna do it. And then I forget the exact transcript, but Maximilian and I ended up chatting, and I think he was kind of in casting too, and he was willing to like talk about like, oh yeah, I've been using this silicone, and I've been trying this resin, and like I've been getting bubbles. This I was like, wait, you're willing to talk to me about what's actually happening? Like, aren't you supposed to be like protecting all your secrets because everyone else like is afraid that you're gonna like, you're actually talking to me like a human being. And it was like, yeah, of course. Like, I got nothing to hide. Like, why wouldn't we just talk about this stuff? And it's like, it was such an immediate relief to
Man.
feel this person that would see me and interact with me. And we're coming from different angles, but it was just really nice to feel that from somebody that had a similar mentality. It wasn't this like I'm in my tower and I have to protect it or like I'm threatened by it. Just I don't know. It was great. So we swapped um, contact info and started talking and as we talked more and more and realized we both really did just care about like exploring this hobby and how do we cast better and what goes into it, and we had a lot of similar views just like of quality that we wanted to achieve and all that. So that we're really great. We actually hung out today. We're still quite good friends even if we don't talk super often, but um, he's been my like single keyboard friend through all of it. And along the way we were just looking at a lot of these ethical holes in the community and lamenting a lot about how much it's a bummer to care about things in this way and see people succeed who really don't care about those things and we feel alienated for those things and all that. So one of those was accessibility of information and that whole idea of like people who make caps in a certain way like actively try and withhold that information. And it's weird because like you want to brag about it. It's like, hey, look at this cool thing I made, but I don't want to
But
talk about how
hey.
I made it because it's my business. And it's like, oh, I don't like, I don't know. And it always felt sketchy to me. It's like, why? Like, if you're really proud of the art that you make, why are you threatened? Like, if you're just cultivating a technology, is that even art? I don't know. It was confusing. So looking around on YouTube, there's very few videos on YouTube, and they
Yeah,
weren't very
they're.
inspiring. I have a really big thing with all of it. Like we talked about respecting people's time,
Hmm.
and that's something I care about tremendously when it comes to content. And I talk about respecting people's eyeballs, where if I go post 10 photos of the exact same thing, I'm really not respecting you as a consumer, because I'm demanding that you look at these 10 things when I'm not really offering anything new in each one. And my personal ethics is I only want to request your eyeballs if I really feel like I have something to show, and it's really going to mean something to you and like be worth your consumption. So YouTube videos are that times 1,000, where like how many YouTube videos do you watch on 2x speed and skip the first 30 seconds because they're just not actually respecting your time. Like they're just talking about like, oh yeah, I just got a new camera and I'm doing this thing, and like, oh yeah, we'll get to what we're doing in a minute, and then 30 seconds into the video, you're actually doing the thing that you care about. And no disrespect to those people, I just don't want to be responsible for that kind of content. So we were looking at, okay, casting, like, you know, I had a bunch of multi-system stuff. We were looking at releasing the L2K, and like I really wanted to bring some more condensed analytical thought through knowledge, like, hey, you want to make keycaps, here's what I think is really important to do that, and I'm not going to make you sit through a 15-minute video that I shot on my phone and did 0 editing on to let you get that info. Like I really wanted to try to make that more accessible and provide at least a landing place for people who aren't sure how to do it. So Max was an incredible teammate for that, because you know, he had a lot more video skill than I did, and just the willingness to spend endless amount of, like, we spent hours and hours scripting it and trying to go like breaking down every paragraph of script of like, okay, are these words unnecessary? Like, is this concept, should this go before or after this other thing? Because if we explain this, then we have to re-explain this. And like, there's so much respect for trying to present information in a nice way.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you know, we could have done a million times better, and watching that video is painful because you look at it like, oh, I wish we'd done this, and like, you know, I've since discovered more about casting to know that some of the information is not fully correct. It's like, oh, I wish that it's like, it doesn't work that way. It was what it was. We worked ridiculously hard on it, and you know, I think it's had a pretty objective impact on the community.
Yeah, I mean,
so,
like,
yeah,
I think I have seen the video before I was even interested in even making Artisans. Like it's really a great video. It's like it gives you like the basic understanding, a bit of more information, like the pros and cons. You know, measuring is important, right? And even you know, the proper equipment, right? Mask, gloves. I think almost every maker, I'm pretty sure, have seen it. Honestly, it's really good. And
yeah.
And like, even I think you made the multi-shoot one last year, right?
Yeah.
I keep watching it like from time to time. Like, okay, so how did he do this? Like, I'm just watching it like to learn a bit more about it, right? And it's pretty cool. And like, I think that video and the Bandit, it's what the first that it got me into you, like on like meeting you. Cool. And I don't know, it's to me it was pretty impressive. It was like such an informative video. I love Bandit, and it's just what it is, right? I hope more people, like, honestly, like, get to meet you. I think in a way you're kind of underrated, right? But like, I don't know why. I don't know. I guess you don't make enough stuff. That's my problem. I guess that's why.
I'm ultimately pretty shy, I think, and like, you just, my own ethics again. Like, I won't reach out to a maker and be like, hey, would you want internals? I'm just not like, I won't post the same picture twice. You know, I have my own code of honor that makes it harder to find me in certain ways and makes me eccentric. Hopefully, I mean, it's great. I really was honored to be invited to be on the stream, and it's great to talk to people. And the more, I think, as we talk with people, there's aesthetics that get cultivated by looking at content where you assume of like, oh, like I don't want to waste their time, or like, oh, this person's probably a jerk or whatever else. And hopefully we can all recognize we're humans and interact more, because I love talking to people about it. And I miss meetups. Bring meetups back.
Yes. So, like, to me, I guess in a way people can actually see that it's not everything, it's not rainbow and flowers, right? Because like it sounds so sad that people were ignoring you like so long ago. And it like, to me, it doesn't make sense, because like you were trying to innovate and you were trying to do this and that, and people like being so jealous about something. To me, it's something that I personally don't understand, and I don't agree as well. Like, for example, like I like, for example, the CBAT Discord server, right? Because like people do help out and they give you feedback, and if something goes wrong, at least they help you, right? And that's something that I personally like. And if I can share like my technique or something that I'm learning, it's something that I will feel proud of, right? If I have like a friend who's actually interested in making artisans, I'm like, oh wow, I actually made someone else want to make artisan. Like I feel so proud of it, right? And I hope like it's just like I need people to understand that, you know, it wasn't like that, right? It was very dark so many like years ago, right? And now everyone can actually give it a go, right? Even if it's like CBUT or the synth or your method, right? And you know, it's something that it's pretty interesting to see, right?
I think it's great, and you know, it's easy to talk about some of the negative things, but
Yeah.
the amount that we have grown as a community is just insane, and it's super cool. And
Yeah.
I feel so much appreciation for everybody that, you know, plays a part in that. And yeah, to look back, like I forget too, to look back 4 years and be like, that was unrecognizable compared to the world we're in now. And of course, we have our own growing pains that come with that, but especially in the ability for like dissemination of knowledge and people being helpful. Like big shout out to Fractal Keys actually, because we have a giveaway coming up, but there's doing in caps. They're actually pretty hype right now, but you know, like you have an opaque core and you have a clear shell. And I'd spent so much time for a year trying to like solve like what is the proper, exact, perfect way to do in caps. And I just every day, so much work, so much R&D. Like, hey, this didn't work. Try this. Like tens of iterations, like so much. And I never could like. I got some, but always something was wrong. And Fractal Keys has been doing in caps for a really long time, and you know his stuff, it looks really nice. I've never gotten to own one, but you know, his shots look great, and it's his thing. So I, much like you, like was afraid of reaching out to people, and probably had some of my own pride of like, I don't want to acknowledge I can't do this thing. And finally, like after another complete failed batch, I was like, I can't. I've done everything I know how to do. I can't solve this. So I hit him up. I was like, hey, dude, so sorry to bother you. Really respect your work. Like, just wondering, like, any hints? Like, I'm happy to just talk about you don't have to give away trade secrets. Totally good if you don't talk to me about like,
trade secrets.
Anything about in caps, I'd really appreciate. And he was like, oh, totally. He walked me through his entire process. Like, an amazing dude. You know, I respect his work a lot, and it was so amazing for him to be willing to share his whole process with me. And through that, I was able to like, okay, this one thing. Like, I did all this stuff on my own already. This one thing I've never tried. And then I could like actively go try that, and I've been able to get a lot more success as a result. So that was significant to me too, to be able to go reach out to someone else and really feel like they were helping me in something that I couldn't solve on my own at the time. So that stuff's really great, and that, you know, didn't happen 4 years ago, and now it's happening all over the place. So
yeah,
and that was, to tie this back, that was part of the point of Artisan Alliance, of recognizing like, hey, people aren't sharing, like everyone is greedy for their knowledge, and I just think that hurts everybody. So we as a group wanted to try to cultivate like, hey, it's okay to give away secrets. Like, you're not going to go out of business because someone else starts making keys. Like, if you have pride in your product, that's going to be fine. We're not, if someone buys your key, it doesn't mean they're not buying my key. So let's just make art together. And, you know, Max really shared that vision. So we'd hoped the Artisan Alliance would spawn, like we wanted to bring in more artisans. It wasn't supposed to just be two of us. And so far we haven't successfully done a collaboration video with anyone else yet. So fingers still crossed that maybe we'll get there. But I think it did help start some of that, you know, just like slowly changing pieces of just how we approach it. And are we celebrating art that we make as a group, or are you trying to hoard all your secrets for yourself? So I think as a community, we are making incredible progress there.
I agree. I think I have one. Funny enough, I won one fractal and in a giveaway sometime ago. Yeah, but it's not encapsulation. I'm honest, guys. I'm not a fan of encapsulation itself. Even though I'm actually making one cap that I'm trying to encapsulate, I'm on the because I don't have a 3D printer, right? So I have to. It's hard for me to iterate when I can't. I don't have the means to. So I take so long. Like, for example, I 3D printed my little logo, right? So I'm trying to put it on a cap, right? Get a mold out of this, and then encapsulate with a cherry. And it's so hard because like, oh no, then the profile it's wrong, or it's a little bit down, and I need to redo everything. It's so hard sometimes, but it's part of the fun.
Well, much respect for trying for it, because that's where all the magic happens, is in the struggle, I think.
Yeah. But it is what it is. And I wanted to interview Fractal, and he had a kid recently, so I was like, one day.
I'll write down for sure.
Yeah, it's very fun to talk with people, honestly, and but yeah, like last year, it's been huge for like mechanical keyboards in general, right? Because of COVID, everyone was, couldn't leave their houses, and I think that's why many people actually start, growing the way that it did, right?
Yeah.
People having more time, and that. All right. I don't know.
Getting close. Is it giveaway time?
Not really. I mean, do you want to? I mean, there's. Oh, so do you have? What's your cap that has the more failure rate?
Ooh, the ones we're gonna give away. Easy answer. Yeah. So, is it okay if we spoil the giveaway, even if we're not doing it right now?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So, I mean, I posted on my Instagram, I think last year. This is the base face. It is an encapsulated
that looks so
thing that I like, and I've never thrown away so many caps ever. Like entire batches with 0 successes. Oof. And especially like I have a thing in my own eccentricity that I really love OG colorways. Like to me, every sculpt in your head when you're making it, it looks there's one colorway that it is. Okay. And like that's from there you do other colors, that's fine. But in your head, there's one, like the soul of this creation looks like this. And I love that. Like the Bandit, I had that very hard, actually twice for the Bandit, which was cool. And Crux caps too. So the base face, the OG colorway is white on black and black on white. And it sounds simple, but they are the most punishing colors to cast ever. Like, especially when you're doing an ink cap. If like, there's one little speck of dust, it's going to show up real hard on both of those colors. Or you're trying to do full white. So, the tiniest little speck, the hairs that you didn't know existed, somehow they get in there.
It's there.
Ruin your cap single-handedly. And I just have absurdly high standards for what I think is an acceptable ink cap. So I've thrown away so many more keycaps than are actually finished. And I will be so relieved because I don't want to run any sales until the OG, like the first sale should always be the OG colorway. That's just like what I believe. So I have some really fun base faces that use fun colors and they look really cool and they're actually a little easier to cast in the OG, but I can't do any sales until
because
I do
the OG done.
So for like literally a year and a half, since before the pandemic started, I have been trying to complete the OG sale for the base face. And I'll get close and then get really demoralized and I'll just like, I can't do it. So I stop for a month or two and then pick it back up and try it again. So I finally am ready. I think next week I'm going to do the sale. I'm so glad to be hopefully soon done with the OG base face. But it has been by far the worst yield I've ever had.
Can't get everybody one place. All right, let's go. Give bread. All right. What about? So, all right. So we talk about a bit of commission, right? You don't really take commissions of colorways or stuff like that, right? But what about collabs, right? Wink, wink. Do you take collabs, or what's the process? Like you're like selecting, or PC months, right?
In many ways, the thing I desire most as a creative individual is to collaborate with other creative individuals. And it's been a big thing in my life where like, as a younger person, there's a lot of the feeling of like, I don't necessarily have the skills that I want. And I kind of want to go in the basement and cultivate my own abilities. And I kind of like, I don't want to show you, like, I don't want to show you in progress things. Like I was very, not quite ashamed, but I wasn't where I wanted to be to display my work. Mm-hmm. And that is something that has very noticeably evolved in me as I've gotten older and like both cultivated skills and relaxed some of my perfectionism that I don't like. And that was a giant thing for me with keycaps, where it was the first time I've ever accepted money for something I made from someone I didn't know. It's one thing to go to a friend like, oh yeah, like I trust, you respect who I am and you know who I am and like I'm making you this thing and all what went into that and like, cool, here's an exchange. But to go someone random person on the internet to be like, cool, here's some money for a product feels really vulnerable to me actually, because I have to be so sure of my product being worth it. And the idea that you would receive it and be like, oh wow, Glenn's a dumbass, like I hate the product, that hurts me a lot. Like I don't want that because I didn't want your money more than I wanted you to enjoy the thing that I made, right? So that was a giant piece of emotional growth for me to be willing to accept that and have the confidence in my own work to do that. And I think similarly with collaborations, there's a point where if I don't have the skills yet, it feels like I'm freeloading almost. Like, hey, will you like solve this thing for me that I can't do? And that just feels disrespectful to you, versus being like, hey, here I am with a skill set and some ideas, and I want to meet you in your skill set and ideas, and let's create something together that's greater than what either one of us could create alone. And to me, that's the most beautiful exchange of energy you can really have. So I'm super excited about exploring that. And I haven't gotten to explore it much. Like, I think collabs are kind of difficult in the keycap community in the same ways we've talked about some of the ethics. There's a certain amount of posturing of either like, oh, I think you're better than me, or I think you're a jerk, and like, I don't know if I want to talk to you. And I don't want to be disrespectful by suggesting we work together, because if you think I'm dumb, like, it's hard. And especially if you're kind of shy and self-conscious, like it's difficult. But I'm really excited about doing collabs, even if they're difficult to find a way that it works for everybody. And in some ways, even just doing my contracting is fun for that, because I get to kind of help input my skills to other people, and that is a little one-directional because, you know, you're giving me money in exchange for my time, versus like, hey, I would love to do some collaboration sculpt, like whether the half and half sculpts are pretty cool, like the fugu.
I think more people should do that. I think those are fun, but I think those are hard as well, because I don't. Some people are like, yeah, you know. But those are my favorite ones. Like,
right? That's the hard part.
Yeah. You need to meet.
I want no fingerprints, and you don't care, and then like I'm upset. Yeah, it's tricky, but I'm talking to a couple people about some things, and certainly if anyone has ideas for collabs, please come talk to me. I'm super down. And
I got you. I have an idea.
I would love, like you said, I would love to see more of that in the community, right? Like just those mashups are so cool, and even it makes us feel like more of a community, right? To have everyone in their little silo is okay, but it's so much more fun to feel like people are talking and acknowledging their influences and stuff like that.
That's very cool to hear. All right. Okay, so let's do this last one, and then we will do the giveaway. So, how would you like to be remembered?
That's an interesting question.
Yes.
I mean, definitely a piece of not exposing. I don't know. Help increasing the reach, like allowing people, or I should say, my original mission statement, right? Help people make better stuff. If people think back on me as like, oh wow, he helped me make better stuff, that gives me a lot of warm feelings. And I think some of that is more looking at the way I approach designing products as opposed to just making keycaps, and ideally some of that impacting how other people do it too. Whether that's, because I put a lot of effort into packaging early, and maybe some part of that helped inspire other people to put more effort into packaging, such that now we have a lot of makers that really care about packaging. Like whatever tiny piece that I played in helping that gain momentum in the community makes me really happy. And just some amount of people thinking it's cool, like, do you think of that as like, oh, that was an example of this cool thing, or was that just another keycap that gets lost in the history of it?
In the sea of artifacts. Oh well. All right. Okay, guys. Let's do the giveaway. So you showed them a bit.
So we got. I apologize, the camera's not great, but we've got a base face, and we got white on black and black on white. And this is kind of fun because we didn't talk about it. We talked about packaging, but we didn't talk about auth cards, and that's another thing that I really enjoy. So
I love auth cards. Yes.
They noticed that I handle authentication differently for every keycap that I make. I do not have a standard auth card. Like the Bandit is one, the 3D2U is totally different, Crux Cap's totally different, and I like the authentication to have something to do with the sculpt itself. So base face, I've been a little not direct about what it represents, but it is about a certain culture for me that I care about. It's a kind of a way of life in a certain way, and it is around the music scene and the way music affects our lives. I mean, it's called the bass face, so that's not the bass face. So when trying to design, like, what is the packaging experience for the bass face, and how do I do this, and what is the auth card and all that stuff? So I was just like thinking a lot, like just for weeks, just like what could I do? And this is the answer. So this is the official base face authentication. This is if you ever
it's
go
a
to
bracelet.
a show, it's a Tyvek bracelet. And so, I mean, it's not a big deal, but I'm proud to have done all this graphic design myself. You know, yeah, it's just text, but sitting there with a blank document and doing the layout is tricky. And a fun part is other side. Each one has an individual serial number and a barcode. So this is your actual authentication number if you get the keycap, and this is the authentication. So if you get one of these, don't just wear it, you know, like
Oh
if you care
no.
this is your off card. But it's just one of those things
so
that
good.
makes me really happy. Even if it's a simple solution, like it's actually way cheaper than doing my normal laser cut business cards with my holographic security stickers. But it's not about that. It's about like paying homage to the spirit of the key. So this is my first reveal of my base face authentication, and that's kind of a fun thing. So the two colorways we have: lights on is uncreatively the white, and lights off is uncreatively the black. But these are the OG base faces. There will be a sale hopefully next week, so we'll watch Instagram for that. If you don't win one of them tonight, but we are going to do one of the white, one of the black, however you normally give things away.
Yes. All right. So I'm going to explain a bit the rules of the giveaways as usual. Because you're the guest, you will pick a word, right? Because we're doing two, so you can pick two words. So the way that it works, I open up. They always tell me to do marbles, and I never do it because I forget, and then whatever. So so what I do, it's basically you pick the word, and then we roll 3 times. So there's going to be three losers, and the fourth one is the one that actually wins. So so people can actually suffer a bit, to get, to wake up, right? So so that's how we do it.
Cool. Let's do it.
All right. I'm gonna switch screen. Let me open this up, so people can start seeing that. Let me see if I did it right. There we go. All right.
Dude, those animations are so sick.
Thank you. All right. All right, boys. You need to pick the word, my dude.
So, walk me through one more time. I pick a word, or they pick
Yes,
a
you
word?
you pick a word. You pick 2 words because it's 1-on-1, right? So you can pick 2 words. Whatever.
And this has to do with who actually wins?
Because they need to type it.
Okay.
So everyone needs to you pick the word, they type it, and then it's gonna roll it, basically.
Let's go with parkour.
Oh no, I don't know how to spell that.
Those of you at home, P-A-R-K-O-U-R.
P-A-R?
P-A-R
Mm-hmm.
K-O-U-R.
K?
Guy nailed it.
Alright. There we go. Oh no. I'm sorry, guys.
Everyone's got it now.
There we go. Parkour. Alright. Alright. So I'm gonna give some time for people to join. 10, 11, you say? Or should we give them more time?
10, 11 sounds pretty good. Everyone's pretty active.
Alright. Oh man, I really love the way you're doing the authentication card for each of them. I only have the banded. It's something that I want to talk a bit of because, like, for example, I love the collab that you did with Aesthetics. The 2U, well, 3D 2U. It's amazing. I love it so much.
Thank you.
It's by far one of my favorite collab. It's so good. And I don't have it. I lost, obviously, but it's so good.
The 3D 2U is tricky because it's so eccentric. Like, I made it for ortho. Like, to me, the 3D 2U belongs as an ortho spacebar. And obviously not many people do that, but it just, as a backspace, it's kind of tricky. So there's probably less than 50 3D 2Us that exist in the world. Like, if I do a sale, there's probably 5 of them at most. Most sales don't have, like, there's just so few of them because there's not a ton of demand necessarily. Like, 2U artisans are just kind of weird. So
true. Like, I don't have 2U artisans, but like that one, I would have. Like the 3D 2U, it's my favorite 2U.
Oh, cool. I appreciate that. So the good news is I do have a lot of unfinished business with that sculpt, and I have some things R&D on my bench right now, especially now because doing the lens inserts like I did for Aesthetic was a really big leap in innovation for me of figuring out how to do that at the quality that I wanted. What just took an immense amount of work, but now that I've done it, it opens up so many new doors to let me express more of the things that I want to express in those sculpts.
And
the
you
3D
even...
2U, go ahead.
Sorry, go.
Oh, just because the lenses are bigger, a lot of the things I really want to make, I can only do on the 3D 2U now. So I hope to be doing more of those in the near-ish future.
Yeah, like I think after aesthetic, you also do the art, right? And you were able to put the the eyes, right?
I did do a 3D 2 for the art, but for the bandits themselves, those are some of my favorite bandits actually. They were kind of like, it was quiet, I guess, but just it felt like it fit the aesthetic really well, and I was really happy with how they all came out.
It amazed me that you have to make a mold for all of them, right? You have to make a new mold, and it's so long because, like, I personally, I'm sorry, but I hate making molds. It's so tedious. It's so boring. I hate making molds.
Honestly, and that's one of the ones where like pricing gets complicated because the amount of because it's not just make a mold. It's design, like
it's
to some
designing.
extent, create a sculpt. It usually takes at least 2 or 3 iterations. Every iteration takes 4 to 5 days to go because I have to print a thing, mold a thing, cast the thing, check it, restart. So much work to do one colorway, and I don't do many keycaps in each colorway. Yeah. And then to sell that for the normal like $60 for a bandit when it's already, you know, like a 6-shot bandit plus this other thing. It's just like so painful. It's like I wish I could just charge more, but it feels unethical for me to increase that. So it's a tricky one, and I won't always do them. But when I do, they're high value in terms of
I think it was 65, which is
I think I did a little bit higher just because it was so much work.
It's totally worth it, man. Don't think about it too much. It's so good.
We'll see.
All right. So we went a bit too much of the time, right?
Yeah.
All right. So I'm gonna pause the music so people can actually suffer more in silence. The first loser of the night is none other than. Oh no, Ivan, Bisu. I'm sorry, man. Oh, he really won. He loves black and white in general.
Oh, nice. He's got one more chance, right?
Yeah, I guess on the raffle. I'm sorry. I mean, you can still win the white, maybe, right?
What were the odds going into this? How many people answered?
There's 17 people.
Okay, so odds are pretty good here.
First are pretty good, actually. Yeah. All right. The second loser of the night is Foresky. Oh no, Foresky, such a nice dude, man. I love Foresky.
Yeah. Dude, you gotta hit me up again. We were talking for a while, but
feels bad. All right. I'm sorry, Forrest. I'm talking with Forrest about some stuff as well. Like he's helping me with some things. All right. I'm sorry, guys. All right, the third loser and the last loser. This is going to be for the white or the black one.
I say we let them pick.
All right.
First winner, you can pick white or black.
All right. Oh no, Valencia. Oh, he's my friend. I'm sorry, buddy. I'm sorry.
Your Nightbot's misleading. It says they won the giveaway.
I know that's how it works, right? It's they're supposed to be winning, right? Supposed to be winning.
Right.
Oh, I'm sorry,
Valencia. This one's for half the money.
The next one. The next one is going to be All right. The actually winner for the night is Vantagat. Congrats, Vantagat.
Drop that in. You want the lights on or lights off, Pentagon? Which is it going to be?
Flame. Lights on or lights off? Yeah, that's a big win. What a whip. Shake my head. Lights off. So, all right.
Lights off. Black. White on black goes to. So just to confirm, this is the lights off.
For Vantagat. Congrats, Vantagat. Congrats. Big win. Win.
Ideally, Vantagat, any winners, DM me, ideally on Discord, but pretty much anywhere. Let me know. I've got your name, so you can't fake it. And then we'll get shipping info.
All right. The second word of the night is going to be.
This one's mine. We're gonna stay tricky. The word is caliper.
Oh God.
These are calipers. You can
Oh,
spell it
okay.
correctly.
I guess calipers, like that. That's how you spell it, guys. I don't know.
Yep,
I'm
nailed
dumb.
it.
Oh, let's
I did.
go.
We'll go singular, so no S,
Oh,
just caliper.
caliper. All right,
Singular.
boys. Caliper.
If you put an S, then switch it to a not S.
Yes. All right. So there's 4 people. Are they spelling it correct? Oh yeah, yes, they're spelling it correct. All right, all right. That's such a big win, man. I'm so happy. I love leaks. Do you have any more leaks that you want to show people off?
Any more what?
Leaks?
Leaks.
Yes.
So a big, I teased it on Instagram, but a big thing I've been playing with is toper stems, which a long time ago I had some toper stems. Designing the internal for toper is really difficult. It's not like MX. The way the switch engages is really tricky. And there's a piece that I really care about for like what the experience of installing a toper cap is really classic. It makes this click when you insert it. That's really satisfying. So I have a loose personal mission to initiate the renaissance of toper artisans, because there's a lot of toper enthusiasts out there, and I always vote for the eccentric guy because I am one myself. So all the people out there that withstand the horrible market that is toper to still use toper, and no one makes toper artisans. One, because the stems are so much harder to cast, and 2, because they don't think there's enough market to justify the effort to sell toper artisans.
I mean,
So
it's kind of crazy because you're like ortho and trapper. It's like almost like you want people to bully you, you know, in a way.
To some extent. I mean, if there was a toper ortho board, someone just came out with one that I didn't buy, but I've wanted to make one. But either way, like me, in my unique position of privilege to be able to influence allowing people to cast things mechanically, I want to just solve toper and just make it accessible to makers, and even like to some extent encourage makers like, hey, you should make some artisan toper caps, just because I think that should be a thing. So it's been weeks of R&D. Again, like an iteration takes 5 days of like hard work.
No.
And I'm on, this is iteration 6 right now, I think. But I think it's finally done. Let's see if the mic picks this up. This is the installation click. Wait. It's not doing it now. It's hard to pick up on a mic, but it feels really good. It definitely is the experience that I want. And I'm excited to be pretty much done with this. And now I can start shipping it to clients who can then start casting artisans for the rest of us. And
man. I mean,
that's a little sneaky peeky right there.
I mean, that's gonna be what you're saying, right? It's gonna be a part of the last question of today, because it's gonna be important. Trust me, because I'm pretty sure eventually there's gonna be like someone's gonna make exclusive strawberry artisan sale. I'm like, yeah, and I'm not looking forward to that, but we will see. All right. Okay, guys, are you guys ready? Should we start?
Yeah.
All right. So the first loser for the lights on is going to be Red Set. Oh, fair. I'm sorry, buddy. I'm sorry, buddy. Big oof. Feels bad, man. All right. Flip this. Oh, no. All right. The second winner. Well, sorry. The second loser for the lights of the winning of Lucien the second time is Archives. God damn it. It's a.
You enter your own giveaways?
No, this is no. Oh. This is another guy. We just have the same. It's pretty weird. I mean,
you should enter your own giveaway.
Can I enter my own giveaway?
You make the rules. I think that means yes.
Yes. All right. Let's go. It's not gonna be rigged. I swear. All right. So the third loser of the night is Homie Carlos. No, he's one of my mods. He really helps a lot. Feels bad, man. I'm sorry, homie. Weaves Rise. Yeah, there's so many weaves. Have you noticed that the person who won had an anime profile picture? Do you watch anime?
I don't. I would say I fundamentally don't understand anime. Not against it. It just has never spoke to me.
All right.
and I have seen very little.
Okay. Fair enough. Fair enough. All right, boys. The person who is going to win today is none other than. Oh god, Pillow Snatcher. Let's go. Congrats, Pillow Snatcher. Congrats,
Nice.
congrats.
Cool. Shoot me a DM somewhere. Pillow Snatcher will get you a cap.
All right. That was fair. Congrats, congrats. You're in the winners club. Oh yes. Oh yes. All right, perfect. All right, let's go back.
Anyone who missed out, there will hopefully be a sale next week. So keep an eye on Instagram for your general things if you want to follow along with GTB Labs. But
all right.
done.
So the last question for the night, as usual, is: do artisans belong on the keyboard or in a stand, like artisan boxes, right? What do you think? There's only one right answer, though. You know that, right?
Well, okay. No, I don't know that.
Oh well.
I think it's complicated in that artisans belong on a board, but it has to be the right board. And that board may not exist yet or ever. So sitting in a box until the true home has been created is the next best thing and is the correct place for them to be until their natural home is created.
50-50. So the right answer for this the question is on the artisan box. But you were close. You were like, okay. So if I have a good excuse to not put it on the board, then we're good, right?
Okay. So then tell me, what is the correct box for them to be in? Do different artisans belong? Like, because you got your aluminum boxes, you got your open top boxes, you got your square boxes. You like, what does the artisan itself belong in a certain kind of box, or just box binary yes no?
I guess I do it in colorway. So for example, you can see my red box. It's in a black aluminum case. So I'm like, these are my most precious one that I have, right?
Yeah.
So they're on a special place, right? So I think that's a good question, though. They never asked me this, so I think the best way to the best artisan box is an alu with a lid on top. That's the way to go. Yes, that's
you
that's
go UV blocking acrylic, or any acrylic is okay.
It doesn't matter. The lid, it's okay. I don't mind the lid. Yeah. I don't judge lids. All right.
So I mean, I feel like I intentionally didn't side rail too much. I almost wanted to interview this whole time and hear all your answers to these same questions, especially now that you're getting into making after collecting for so long. But will you indulge me at least with your favorite, most precious keycap that you own?
Oof, that's a hard one, because it can be value wise, right? That's has trade value, or something that's close to me, right?
Or hardest to get, or there's a bunch of metrics. So just tell me which metric you're evaluating it from, and then which key.
Oh, I know which one. Well, there are many. It's it's not cheating. Okay, it's not cheating because it's a set. So for my interview with Texas Destroyer, he made I asked him. He told me that if I wanted some, but he already made the ID cards for them, so he didn't want to change it. So he made a different colorway, which is called the Glorious Archbust, and it's this whole line, right? So all of these are he made them, right, for me. So to me, sentimental value, that's very close to my heart, right? Because I didn't expect it, and having an artisan name after it's like a goal to me. Not like a goal, but I never expected that, right? It means a lot to me.
Cool, that's awesome.
Yeah, and if it was like a value or trade value, I guess bongo cats. I have 2 bongo cats.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so I mean, that to me, it's like I like them. They're hard to win.
The gray one, that's
it's purple. It's the purple rain.
Okay.
Purple rain.
Oh, nice.
And green grilled cheese. Yes. So you have those. But yeah,
I like it.
Oh boy. Yeah.
Cool.
All right.
Wait, thanks so much for having me on. Really honored to be here. Great to chat to you. I hope we'll chat a lot more. And
Yeah.
it's super fun going through some serious talk about stuff that most people would avoid. So thanks for being down.
No, I mean that's why I do these interviews. Like I mentioned a bit earlier on private, it was that I want to get actually to meet and put a face to the artisan behind it, right? And I
Yeah.
think that's very important. And if I can get a chat of it, and people can actually learn and actually meet and know, the whole thing, the whole story
Yeah.
about it, right? It's pretty cool, and it's good to see, I think. So yeah, I mean, I'm honored that you accepted it, and I'm really happy about that.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Well, it's been great to be here.
yeah. All right, boys. Thank you everyone who came. Thank you, Glenn, and hopefully I will see you in in the DMs, right? All right,
Oh,
boys.
yeah. Definitely be tuned in the future.
Yeah. All right. Everyone, take care. Say bye to Glenn, and I'm really looking forward for the next raffle, my dude.
Hopefully,
Take
we'll
care,
see you all in
everyone.
the meetup.
Yes, meetup. Are you going to out of talk? Are you going to go to the meetup, to the one that the Novel Kid's doing?
No, it doesn't make sense for me to travel that far at this point, but
Yeah, fair
hopefully
enough.
soon.
All right. Take care, guys. Goodbye. Good night.